Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto friends with the Shinigami part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. In the depths of Yomi, the Shinigami sat on his obsidian black throne and thought about a serious matter. Earlier today he had been summoned by a mortal so that the dead demon consuming seal could be used to stop the Kyuubi from attacking the man's village. All in all, a fairly simple task of a god of his stature, and it was a great break from his usual monotony. However, things had not gone as the Shinigami had expected. That heretic Minato Namikaze had dared to try and alter the dead demon-consuming seal so that the Kyuubi would be sealed into his newborn son, instead the Kyuubi being dragged into Yomi. For that crime, the Shinigami had completely obliterated Minato's soul instead of sending the man's soul on to be reincarnated like he normally did for those who summoned him. What made the man's crime all the more unforgivable was the fact that the mortal had been afraid that he wouldn't be able to pull all of the Kyuubi's soul out of the demon's body to be devoured before his life gave out. If that mortal had read the contract that the Shinigami had created, the man would have realized that after summoning the death god, the mortal only directed who the Shinigami would take. The mortal's power did not enter into the equation because everything the Shinigami did was done under his own power. Still, Minato's crime carried consequences beyond those that the destroyed man could answer for. Naruto Namikaze, for gods and goddess only call the mortal by their true name, had been exposed to a tremendous amount of the Shinigami's divine energy. In fact, the little babe had been exposed to so much energy that had the Shinigami not acted, the poor child would have died. Mortals might view death as a horrifying and uncaring end to life, but that is not the case. The Shinigami, as the god of death, is extremely fair, and just as in death one cannot lie or deceive. Allowing a newborn to die before his time like that would have been crime against justice. However, even though Naruto Namikaze's life had been saved, the Shinigami was still left with quite the quandary. By saving Naruto's life, the boy had become the Shinigami's responsibility according to the divine laws regarding divine/mortal interactions. For a few minutes the Shinigami just sat on his throne and thought about what he should do for the boy. The death god thought about giving boy a new bloodline limit like most other kami did for mortals that they were patrons of. Exactly what this bloodline would entail the Shinigami had no clue, but he knew that whatever he graced Naruto with, it would be a bloodline that would show that Naruto was his ward. All plans of that nature had to be put on hold when the Shinigami sensed a great danger towards his ward. Thanks to his divine abilities, the Lord of Yomi knew exactly what was threatening Naruto. It seemed that several members of Konoha's High Council were demanding the newborn's death. Actually, they were demanding the death of the Kyuubi, which they moronically believed was Naruto. This was something that the Shinigami wouldn't allow. It looked like he would have to show the stupid mortals their place. In Konoha's council chambers, all members of the council were assembled, and a large group was demanding Naruto's death to slay the Kyuubi. Before Sarutobi could say anything in defense of Naruto, the room became icy cold. Then everyone was hit by what felt like an ocean of killing intent that caused everyone to become weak in the knees. Only Naruto seemed immune to the cold and the killing intent as he softly cooed. Finally, everything was topped off by the Shinigami appearing in the center of the chamber, in his grim glory. The Shinigami looked at everyone in the chamber one by one, and then he said, "Listen and listen well, foolish mortals. Naruto Namikaze, son of Minato Namikaze, your beloved Yondaime, who rests in his crib in this room, does not carry the Kyuubi. As is stated in the ancient pact, I have claimed the demon's soul as my own property. For his crime of attempting to alter the seal, your Yondaime's soul has been destroyed. So it shall be with any of you here in Konoha who tried to attack the boy over events that happened tonight." On seeing that the council members were starting to get over their shock, the Shinigami continued, "So strange that you foolish mortals would attack a perfectly innocent boy because a demon attacked. If you truly wanted to punish people connected with attack, then look to the Uchiha. It was after all a member of their clan who tricked the Kyuubi into attacking your village." The Shinigami felt a twinge of retreat over revealing this fact, as he was sure the foolish people of Konoha would probably try to kill every last Uchiha that they could, given how their emotions were at the moment. However, the Shinigami didn't feel too guilty over revealing this fact. The Sharingan, being the only bloodline given by a devil, was a mistake that the kami had allowed to exist on the earth for too long. Madara Uchiha's Manjiki Sharingan and its eternal form was proof enough that the clan needed to be wiped out. Besides, even if the people of Konoha didn't kill every last Uchiha in the village in a fit of grief and rage, it would only be a few years before the fates activated their plan to drive the clan to extinction. The Shinigami then floated over to where Naruto was laying. Everyone watched in silent surprise as the Shinigami raised his hand over Naruto. To their surprise, black lighting started crackle and strike the Shinigami's hand and Naruto. In a voice that terrified all of the onlookers, the Shinigami then said, "Grow strong, Naruto Namikaze. One day you shall be like a tiger amid a flock of sheep." Turning to face Sarutobi, the Shinigami said as a black sealed scroll appeared on the Hokage's desk, "Keep this safe for Naruto. When the boy activates my gift, That scroll will tell him how to use my gift. And if I was you mortal, I wouldn't attempt to open the scroll. I have set it so that if anyone other than Naruto opens the scroll, that person will instantly drop dead." With that said, the Shinigami disappeared, leaving a shell-shocked council behind him. The quiet that had been caused by the Shinigami's arrival was suddenly broken by one of the council members plunging a kunai into Fugaku Uchiha's throat and shouting, "Death to the traitors!" Suddenly, the highly charged emotions of almost everyone in the council chambers erupted into a bonfire of hatred with that act. Due to the Kyuubi's attack, almost everyone in Konoha was suffering from grief and rage. This grief and rage caused the people of Konoha to turn on the closest target that they could, the Uchiha clan. Sarutobi could hardly believe how things had gone and what was going on right now. Just minutes ago, he had been using every ounce of his skill to keep the people from trying to kill Naruto. Now, due to the Shinigami's unexpected visit, he was sitting almost completely alone in Konoha's council chambers. Even inside the chambers, Sarutobi could hear the sounds of the enraged shinobi and civilian mob heading towards the Uchiha sector with genocide on its mind. It torn at Sarutobi's heart to just sit there, but he knew that there was no way that he could hope to reason with that mob in its current state. All Sarutobi could do was pray that at least some of the Uchihas managed to escape the mob's clutches. For surely, Sarutobi reasoned, it was completely unacceptable to kill innocent people for the crimes of one person. After letting out a sigh, Sarutobi looked down at Naruto, and the old leader couldn't help but be amazed that Naruto was able to remain calm throughout everything that had happened. Sarutobi then gently picked up Naruto's swaddled form and held the little boy close to his heart. Even with all that was going on, Sarutobi couldn't help being afraid for Naruto. The old leader's original plan of keeping Naruto safe from Minato's enemies by giving Naruto his mother's name of Uzumaki was now useless. Everyone in Konoha now knew, or would know by morning through the grapevine, that Naruto was Minato's son, so not giving Naruto his proper last name to protect the boy was useless. While slowly waving a finger in front of Naruto to amuse the little guy, Sarutobi said, "Naruto Namikaze, Maelstrom Wind/Wave or Maelstrom Chaos. Given how your life has been so far, little guy, I don't think that there has ever been a more appropriately named child." 6-year-old Naruto Namikaze was standing in the kitchen of his apartment preparing his lunch. Naruto had his own apartment due to a decision of Konoha's council, and Naruto knew exactly why, thanks to Grandpa Sarutobi. Many of the villagers hadn't liked the fact that the son of the Yondaime had been living in the orphanage. At the same time, a fight broke out every time someone tried to adopt Naruto because of various factions wanting the Yondaime's son living with a family that would raise him to support their stances. Finally, when Naruto was 5 years old, Sarutobi had managed to work out a compromise. Thus, Naruto lived alone in a fairly nice apartment with the matron of the orphanage visiting him 2 to 3 times a week to make sure that he was alright. Naruto was living in the apartment instead of the Namikaze estate because the apartment was more secure than the estate at the moment. Once Naruto showed a predetermined level of skill, he would be allowed to live in his clan's estate. Sarutobi's compromise got Naruto out of the orphanage, which suited everyone and at the same time ensured that Naruto wasn't forced into one faction or another. Keeping the Yondaime's son out of a rival faction's clutches was far preferable to all of the various factions than having Naruto raised by one faction or another. Naruto hated the fact that everyone seemed to be so worried about his security, but he could understand why they were worried. One time when Sarutobi had brought Naruto to the Hokage's office, Naruto had managed to glance at a document on Sarutobi's desk when Sarutobi had gone to the bathroom. Needless to say, it had been quite a shock to Naruto back then when he found out that the document was a report on Iwa's 80th attempt on his life that had just been intercepted. When Sarutobi had returned from the bathroom, he had to comfort a very distressed 5-year-old. Shaking his head, Naruto returned his focus to making his sandwich. Naruto knew that he would need to eat his meals if he was to grow big and strong so he could complete his goal in life. Naruto's goal was very simple and straightforward goal: surpass his father. He was tired of people of the village referring to him as the Yondaime's son or respectable heir. Also, Naruto had had it with Iwa constantly trying to kill because he was the son of Konoha's Yellow Flash. If people were going to show him respect or try to kill him, Naruto had vowed to himself, it because of what he had done, not who his father was. Just as Naruto was about to bite into his sandwich, he heard a muffled sound coming from one of the walls. It sounded like someone had either fallen or dropped something heavy. Naruto instantly became alert and was afraid that the sound was coming from a would-be assassin. However, Naruto started to disregard the idea of an assassin when he remembered that the wall that the sound had come from was from one of adjoining apartments. Any person trying to assassinate him, or so Naruto reasoned, would just come in through the window or the front door since it would be quicker. With his curiosity piqued, Naruto abandoned his untouched sandwich and headed over to the apartment where the sound had come from. Naruto's childish curiosity only increased when he got to the door of his neighboring apartment and found out that the door was unlocked. After gently pushing the door open, Naruto walked into the apartment and then blinked. There was a girl sitting shocked on the apartment's kitchen floor covered in flour, milk, and eggs with a large bowl on the floor by her feet. Quickly Naruto called out in a sincere voice, "Hey there! Is there anything I can do to help?" Koiki Kazuhana was not happy with how her 9-year-old life was going at the moment. A month ago she had watched her own uncle kill her father, and then witnessed her beloved home being torched as she was carried to safety. She was now an orphan with a bounty on her head, which, oh by the way, had been placed on her by her own uncle, and was living in a foreign country. In an attempt to brighten her mood, Koiki had tried to make a treat that her mother had always made for her. Tried was the important word since she was wearing the ingredients all over her. Just when Koiki thought that things couldn't get any worse, she heard an innocent and concerned voice calling out to her. Instantly Koiki whipped her head around and spotted Naruto standing in her apartment. She then said in a nervous manner, "Who are you? Why are you here?" Naruto then cheerfully said, "Hello there. My name's Naruto Namikaze. I live in the apartment to the right of yours and I heard you fall down. Sorry, but I was worried you were hurt." When Naruto saw that Koiki wasn't responding, he said in a more concerned manner, "Are you okay?" Then Naruto stuck out his hand and said, "Let's be friends." All Koiki could do at the moment was blink her eyes in confusion. Here she was covered in cooking ingredients, and this little boy was offering to be her friend. Koiki then quickly realized that she couldn't ever really recall having a friend. Back in Snow Country, her various playmates were too subservient to her to ever really be considered friends. Giving Naruto a small smile, the first to adorn her face since her father's death, Koiki said, "Sure, Naruto. My name is Koiki Kazuhana." Maybe, Koiki mused, all she really needed to cheer herself up was a friend. Kumo's ambassador was standing on the roof of one of Konoha's many buildings looking towards the Hyuga compound. The ambassador had been ordered by the Sandame Raikage to steal one daughter of the main family so that Kumo could acquire the Byakugan bloodline. If the ambassador actually was the good little toady that the Raikage thought he was, then he would be down trying to steal one of those girls. However, the ambassador had no intention to follow his order. It was plainly obvious that this mission was supposed to be a suicide run because there was no way that he could hope to get in, nab the kid, and get back to Kumo without getting captured and killed. That, the ambassador thought with a sneer, was probably what the old bastard wanted in the first place. Have the ambassador killed by an enraged father, and then as the injured party demand the body of said father? Well, there was no way that the ambassador would allow himself to be sacrificed to help an old SOB hold on to power. To ensure that the Raikage's plans wouldn't go as planned, the ambassador had purposely left his orders in his vest pocket so that if he was killed, the Raikage would be exposed for what he was. Also, the ambassador had no intention of completing his mission. Stealthily sneaking away, the Kumo ninja headed off towards a specific apartment complex. Ever since he had gotten this mission, the ambassador had known that the only way he could continue to live was to become a missing ninja. As he planned to join another village after this whole fiasco was over, the ambassador had decided to modify his mission. Instead of kidnapping a Hyuga, he was planning on going after the Namikaze. Konoha might keep the little prince under lock and key, but that was a lock that he could easily pick. IWA would offer him a place of honor for bringing the Yellow Flash's child to them. Naruto and Koiki were both lying on Naruto's living room floor. Ever since the duo had met all those months ago, they had been close friends. This wasn't very surprising since both of them could understand the situation that the other was in and they could relate to each other. Thanks to Naruto and his cheerful attitude, Koiki was able to come out of her shell and pretty much return to the happy girl she used to be. Of course, Koiki wasn't carefree and naive like she used to be before her father's death, but that was to be expected. Right now the duo wasn't playing a game and instead they were studying. To be more specific, Koiki was studying and Naruto was helping her out by giving her review questions from her textbook. As the two of them had hung out together, Koiki slowly got the idea of becoming a ninja herself. So she got permission and started attending classes when the academy started in the fall. Naruto had wanted to join the academy as well, but he knew that he was still too young to join. What is the Shodai Hokage's actual name? Hashirama Senju. How many official ninja ranks are there in Konoha? 5. Genin, Chunin, Special Jonin, Jonin, and Hokage. Why aren't Hunter Ninjas or Anbu considered to be a separate ninja rank? Because they are jobs that ninjas hold and ninjas of all different ranks perform those two jobs. The 5 main elements used in elemental jutsu are fire, water, wind, earth, and lightning. What is the lowest life form that a ninja can expect to encounter? Fangirls/fanboys, now stick to the questions that are in the textbook Naruto. This happy scene was suddenly interrupted by the sound of the front door being kicked open. Both preteens turned their head and their eyes widened when they saw an unknown ninja standing in the doorway wearing a Kumo head protector. The foreign ninja looked at Naruto, then glanced at Koiki, returned his gaze to Naruto, and started to chuckle. Well, the ambassador said, I came for the Flash's brat, and it seems I get a princess for a bonus. Instantly Naruto pulled out a kunai while Koiki pulled out the Kazuhana family tanto. The sight of the duo preparing to defend themselves from the ninja just made their would-be kidnapper smile. Did these brats really think that they could hope to defend themselves against a fully trained ninja? In a who-cares manner the ambassador flung half a dozen shuriken at the duo. Neither Iwa nor Dota cared if Naruto or Koiki were brought in alive or dead. Making a split-second decision, Naruto tackled Koiki and took the shuriken in his back. The Kumo ninja then grabbed Naruto, lifted the boy into the air and said, "So you would offer your own life to protect your comrade. A noble sentiment, young Namikaze. You might have grown to be an excellent ninja. However, we shall now never know." With that said, the Kumo ninja swung his other hand that was holding a kunai towards Naruto. Just as Koiki was about to stab the attacker in an attempt to free Naruto, she saw Naruto grab the hand with the kunai by the wrist. Koiki watched as her and Naruto's attacker's face changed from mild surprise to horror. What are you doing, brat? Why can't I move my limbs?" Naruto then called out in an angry voice, "I won't let you hurt my friend." Koiki, even though she mentally filed that comment of Naruto's away for later, was now focusing her eyes on Naruto's hand as he gripped his attacker's wrist. Naruto's hand started to glow with a grayish-black light that shocked Koiki, but that wasn't the most surprising thing going on. When Koiki turned to look at the attackers, she almost couldn't believe what she was seeing. The man's face was rapidly aging like something out of a horror film. This scene ended when the now mummified attacker fell to the ground. Sarutobi was sitting on a bench in Konoha's hospital with Koiki resting her head on his lap. As Sarutobi was gently running his hand through Koiki's hair in a soothing manner, he heard the sound of a door opening up. He turned his head towards the door and saw the medic ninja standing there, apparently waiting for permission to speak. In a tired voice, the old Hokage softly said, "Report, doctor." The medic ninja then calmly said, "The Yandame's son is in perfect health, Lord Hokage." This is completely at odds with what Princess Kazuhana stated when she was questioned. Also, it is even more puzzling because the respectable heir's shirt has 6 cuts into that are freshly stained with his blood. "I just don't know what to say, Lord Hokage. Everything points to Yodame's son being wounded, but he isn't." After Sarutobi nodded his head to show that he understood, the doctor continued on. "As confusing as the respectable heir's condition is, it isn't nearly as confusing as the attacker's corpse. Dental records and fingerprint records all stated that the attacker was Kumo's ambassador. But I don't have the corpse of a 30-year-old ninja on my examination table. I have the corpse of a very old man who obviously died due to advanced age." Naturally, Sarutobi understood the medic ninja's confusion. There wasn't any kind of jutsu in existence that could do what apparently had happened. And even if such a jutsu existed, there was no way that Naruto could have gotten his hands on it. Suddenly Sarutobi remembered what the Shinigami had said almost 7 years ago. Without realizing it, Sarutobi whispered out loud, "He shall be like a tiger amid a flock of sheep." On seeing the perplexed look on the doctor's face, Sarutobi quickly said those were the words that the Shinigami used when he spoke about Naruto on that day. Something in Sarutobi's mind suddenly clicked and he said, "Use the bloodline limit detection jutsu, Naruto." The Shinigami said that he had given Naruto a gift. What if this gift is actually a bloodline? That would explain how Naruto could do what he did. Immediately the doctor nodded her head, and she left to go perform the test. After she left, Sarutobi sighed and said, "I honestly don't know whether I want what happened to be a bloodline limit or something else." Naruto sat at his desk in his repair department, and he was staring at the black sealed scroll on his desk. When he had woken up in the hospital, he had been told that he had killed Kumo's ambassador. Even more shocking to Naruto was the fact that he had a bloodline limit, and that he had used that limit to kill his attacker. At first, Naruto had been worried about the political fallout over the ambassador's death. Even at his age, Naruto was well aware of how dangerous political machinations could be. Luckily for Naruto's peace of mind, Sarutobi had quickly explained what had happened. Apparently, the Raikage had been aware of what exactly had happened that night, and had sent a letter demanding the death of Hayashi Hyuga over the man killing Kumo's ambassador. That letter, along with the ambassador's recovered and indisputable orders, had damned the Sandaime Raikage. In fact, Sarutobi stated that the Sandaime Raikage had been deposed, blinded, and was now rotting in the Lightning Daimyo's dungeons. After all of that had been cleared up, Sarutobi had handed Naruto the scroll currently sitting on Naruto's desk. All Sarutobi had said about the scroll was that it was left to Naruto by the Shinigami himself, and that only Naruto could open the scroll. Needless to say, Naruto had been very surprised and even a bit frightened at the idea of the Shinigami leaving a message for him. Like all the other kids in the village, Naruto knew that his father had summoned the Shinigami to take the Kyuubi to the afterlife. What if, Naruto wondered nervously, the Shinigami had demanded something from him as well for sealing the Kyuubi? Regaining his courage, Naruto reached over, broke the seal on the scroll, and started to read it. The scroll was actually a letter to Naruto from the Shinigami himself, and it said, Naruto Namikaze. I am the Shinigami, and if you are reading this, then that mortal leader of your village has given this scroll to you like I instructed. As you may or may not be aware, your father Minato Namikaze attempted to alter the dead demon-consuming seal to seal the Kyuubi into you because of his mistaken belief that it was impossible to use my summoning to completely defeat the Kyuubi. Of course, I naturally collected the Kyuubi's soul and destroyed your father's soul for his heresy. I do not tell you this, mortal, to make you angry at me, but rather I do this so that you might understand what is going on. Due to what happened on that night, you are my ward under celestial law. This means that I am, at least in part, responsible for you and how your life goes. To handle this duty, I have granted you a bloodline limit the likes of which haven't been seen in the mortal realm before. Your bloodline makes you a hunter, Naruto Namikaze. Your senses will be more advanced than other mortals, but not as advanced as some mortals who have bloodlines that deal with the senses. The art that mortals call genjutsu will come naturally to you, and your body will have superior healing abilities. I have crafted your superior senses, genjutsu, and healing abilities so that they complement the primary purpose of your bloodline. The primary purpose of your bloodline is to extract and process the vitality of all living creatures. As your recent kill shows, you can use this ability to kill your enemies. With the refined vitality that you collect, you will be able to increase your healing abilities exponentially, go without eating, and extend your mortal lifespan. Also, I have given you and your descendants the ability to transfer vitality that you have processed to other mortals. Even as young as you are, Naruto Namikaze, you will be able to see the great power that I have granted to you. As I am an extremely powerful kami, it is only fitting that a bloodline gifted by me be powerful as well. However, know this, mortal. I am always watching you, and I will kill you if you abuse your bloodline. To ensure that you know what abusing your bloodline is, I will tell you this. The conscience is a divine gift given to all mortals who listen to it. Always remember your place, mortal, and make sure that your descendants know their place as well. Naruto read and reread that letter 3 times before he set it down on the desk. He then raised his hands and looked at them. They seemed to be perfectly normal hands, which just didn't seem right to Naruto at moment. Surely hands that had such a dangerous power within them would look different than an ordinary 7 years hands. However, no matter how hard he looked, Naruto couldn't find any signs on his hands that they had the power that he knew they had. After a minute or so of looking at his hands, Naruto stopped looking at his hands and he went off to find a pair of gloves. Until he was confident that he wouldn't accidentally activate his bloodline's ability, Naruto swore he would keep his hands covered. Naruto didn't like the idea of keeping his hands covered, especially indoors and during the hot summer months that were going to start once winter was over. However, Naruto didn't like the idea of accidentally turning someone into a mummy even more. Once he had the gloves on, Naruto promised himself that he would talk to Grandpa Sarutobi in the morning. Maybe Grandpa Sarutobi would be able to get him some small animals like rabbits or cats to practice his bloodline on. Also, Naruto promised himself that he would check up on Koiki. Witnessing 2 assassination attempts couldn't be very good for her after all, Naruto thought. Naruto would have gone and checked on his this very moment, but he knew that it was currently past Koiki's bedtime. Actually, it was past his bedtime as well, Naruto realized, and so he headed to his bathroom to get ready for bed. About 2 years had passed since the Kumo incident, and it was time for the Ninja Academy to start up again after summer recess. Currently, Naruto and Koiki were walking to the academy together. Today was Naruto's first day at the academy, and he was ready to start. He would be one of the younger students in his class because the cutoff date for grades was October 15th, but he didn't care. Most of the first year was theory and very basic training, and Naruto knew he had those down. Much to Naruto's annoyance, a good deal of the villagers tended to stare at him and Koiki. Even after all these years, seeing the son of the yondaime and a genuine princess walking together seemed to be something that just had to be noticed. Naruto might have come to partially accept that the people of Konoha would pay him a certain level of respect due to who his father was, but he still hated it. Still, Naruto knew he would have to put up with it until he had managed to prove himself as a ninja. Koiki saw the annoyance in Naruto's eyes and she just gave him a sad smile. If Naruto thought that his situation was bad now, how would he handle the fangirls that he would naturally develop due to his station and his skills? The princess then felt a small twinge of guilt when she realized that Naruto's outfit, which she had picked out for him, was probably only going to compound his fangirl problem. Currently, Naruto was wearing a black form-fitting t-shirt and brown cargo pants. Hey, Naruto had asked her to help him pick out his wardrobe, how could she refuse? Once the two of them got to the Ninja Academy, Koiki gave Naruto a hug and she headed off to her new classroom. As a first-year student, Naruto headed towards the gymnasium where he and the rest of the first years were to be given a welcome to the school lecture. It didn't take Naruto very long to get to the gymnasium and find a spot to sit on one of the benches. He then calmly watched as the partially filled benches were filled with hopeful students. As he was watching, Naruto played a game of trying to guess who among the new students would drop out of the academy by the end of the month. A huge number of the children in the village wanted to be ninjas, and that was understandable considering how important ninjas were to the village. However, most kids tended to quickly drop out once they realized the work needed in being a ninja. By the academy's second year, the breakdown of the remaining students tended to be about 50 from a ninja clan, 40 from civilian families who had 1 or 2 family members already in the ninja corps, and finally a determined 10 who had no family history of being a ninja. Finally, the school bell rang and the principal of the academy walked into the gymnasium. The principal then took the stage and said, "Hello there, students. My name is Professor Kosuke Miyagi, and I am the principal of this fine academic establishment. Over a 5-year period, you children will learn the basics of what being a ninja is and the skills that a ninja needs to survive. Remember that being a ninja is a very serious business, and that by coming here you, or at least your parents, have carefully considered what being a ninja will mean for you. There will be those among you here today that will eventually find that being a ninja is not your calling. For those of you who do drop out of the ninja program, I will say this: there is no shame in realizing that you have made a mistake. For those of you who don't drop out, you will not tease or give those who drop out a hard time. Any student who does will be put on notice and expelled from the program if they keep on teasing. Also, any student who uses what is taught here to bully others will be expelled and denied any chance of readmission. This is an academy to teach the future soldiers of Konoha, to a place for bullies. Now then, I would like to talk more about the educational opportunities here. As I said earlier, you all will learn the basics of being a ninja and the skills you will need. Those of you who are from established ninja clans will probably receive extra training from your family. That extra training is perfectly fine, but you must understand that training with your clan is no excuse for not completing the work that is required by the academy. I want to assure all of you who are not from a ninja clan that you do not need to worry about failing behind your fellow students. Here at the academy, we start at the very basics and build up from there. For those of you who are still worried, I am proud to announce that the school library and the gym are open after classes are over for your independent study. No doubt many of you right now are getting tired of hearing me speak. While my speech might be ending in just a moment, you all will have to get used to the idea that you will have a lot of lectures. Farewell, my new students, and I pray that your studies will be fruitful. Dismissed. The first year at the Ninja Academy flew by for Naruto, even though he was bored out of his mind most of the time. He realized that most of his fellow students didn't have as much knowledge as he did on many of the subjects covered that year. Still, it had been very boring for Naruto to sit through lectures on subjects that he had learned years ago. Although when Naruto considered that the only other options he had were to either drop from the program or to get an advanced placement test which might cause the appearance of favoritism, he much preferred to tough it out. Currently, Naruto was in class half listening to his teacher give a lecture on bloodlines. It was the middle of his second year at the academy, and in Naruto's opinion his second year was shaping up to be even worse than his first year. It wasn't the material covered in class that was making the year so bad for Naruto. While Naruto already knew most of the material, it was now reaching a level that interesting to hear about even in a review. No, Naruto's problem was something far worse than boredom: fangirls. What did he do to deserve the curse of fangirls was a question that was always very prominently on Naruto's mind. It seemed that just because of who his father was and the fact that he tended to be the head of the class, karma had equalized his good luck with the plague of fangirls. There were only 3 things about the fangirls that Naruto could find acceptable. First was the fact that his classmate Niji Hyuga unintentionally kept the most rabid of the fangirls away because that type preferred to go after the brooding boy rather than the friendly achiever. Next, there was the fact that every time he was with Koyuki the fangirls stayed away. And finally, when all else failed, fangirls made useful living targets to practice genjutsu on. Speaking of genjutsu, Naruto's skill in that art was quite advanced for his age. Even though Naruto didn't focus all of his free study time on genjutsu, he did practice it a lot. Besides, there was a distinct satisfaction of being able to use such an overlooked part of the ninja arts to beat the braggarts in the class with. Also, there was the fact that genjutsu was a part of his bloodline that Naruto could practice without attracting too much attention. Genjutsu, along with Naruto's improved healing rate, was the facet of his bloodline, which was still unnamed, that the people of Konoha knew about. Naruto didn't like the fact that everyone and their brother knew he had a bloodline, but at least only Grandpa Sarutobi, Koyuki, his doctor, and the village jonin knew what his bloodline was truly capable of. It wasn't that he was frightened or ashamed of his bloodline's main powers, he just didn't want his future enemies to know about those powers yet. After all, deception was a very useful tool for a ninja. Naruto returned his full attention to the class when he heard the teacher end his lecture and asked the students if they had any questions. Immediately, one of the aspiring kunoichi, not a fangirl as Naruto knew that Tenten was very serious about her studies, raised her hand. Upon receiving a nod from the teacher, Tenten said, "Sir, I was looking in the school library the other day and something confused me. Our textbooks list the Sharingan bloodline as effectively extinct, but a book in the library written before the Kyuubi incident lists the Sharingan bloodline as an active Konoha bloodline. Were the holders of this bloodline killed by the Kyuubi? Everyone in the class then started to pay attention as they were curious about what their teacher would say. The teacher then sighed and said, "No, Tent and the Uchiha clan, the family that had the Sharingan bloodline, were not wiped out by the Kyuubi. Instead, the Uchiha clan was massacred by the people of Konoha." Instantly, the entire class was murmuring to each other. They had learned about Kiri's bloodline purges last week, and almost none of the students could believe that something like that had happened in Konoha. After letting his students murmur for a bit, the teacher silenced them and continued on explaining. "The fact that the village massacred an entire clan might be hard for you all to accept right now, but you must understand why this tragedy happened. Immediately after the Kyuubi's assault, people were hurting and almost everyone in the village was seeking an outlet to vent their frustration on. The people then found out that it was a member of the Uchiha clan who caused the Kyuubi to attack the village. That caused a large mob to form with vengeance on its mind, and well, the rest is history." When the massacre was over, an investigation was launched to examine the Uchiha clan archives. The information that was discovered in the Uchiha archives was troubling to say the least. In order to activate the final level of the Sharingan bloodline, which was known as the Manjikyu Sharingan, a person had to kill their best friend. However, use of the Manjikyu Sharingan caused a few members who had attained it slowly go blind. One Uchiha, whose name was Madara Uchiha, discovered that by stealing his own brother's eyes he could escape his blindness. One of the other students in the back then asked, "Teacher, why was such a vile clan let into Konoha in the first place? How could anyone think that such a clan could be trusted? I mean, they murdered their best friends for power, and they were willing to steal each other's eyes." A murmur of agreement rose up from most of the students on this subject. The teacher then just shook his head and said, "Life is not that simple, my students. You have to understand that before the Kyuubi assault, the Uchiha clan was a highly respected ninja clan. They served as the police force of Konoha. No one suspected that they had such a terrible secret. There is a lesson that you all can learn from this. Never just accept that something is true about a situation because it appears true at first glance." This whole conversation was really interesting to Naruto. However, there was one thing about the teacher's lecture that was bugging him. So once he got the chance, Naruto calmly asked, "Sir, you mentioned that Konoha massacred the Uchiha clan. But you never said if every Uchiha was killed in the massacre. Did the village kill every Uchiha or did some escape?" While nodding his head, the teacher said, "Very good question, Naruto. That is exactly the kind of question that ninjas need to ask themselves when they are in the field. In answer to your question, Naruto, we honestly don't know if some of the Uchiha escaped. When the bodies of the Uchiha were catalogued, the body count was 8 short. However, when we cross-checked the bodies to the clan register, it turned out that the 8 missing people were all children 10 years and younger. It is entirely possible that those 8 Uchihas are still alive, but it is far more likely that they either died from injuries sustained in the massacre and or were eaten by wild animals." Even though everyone accepted that, Naruto filed the information away in his mind. Something inside of him was telling him that it might be important someday. Naruto was in the men's locker room at one of the more prestigious onsens in Konoha. Last week, Koiki and her class had graduated from the academy, and to celebrate the occasion, Naruto had gotten her a ticket for a private bath at this facility. To Naruto's surprise, Koiki had asked him to join her and her small group at the onsen. Sure, Naruto and Koiki did like to use the onsens in their apartment building together, but Naruto had honestly been expecting Koiki to use his gift for some bonding time with her friends or her teammates. Once Naruto had all of his clothes stored in the basket that was provided, he made sure that the towel around his waist was secured, grabbed another towel to use to dry off, and then walked down to the reserved room. When Naruto got to the reserved onsen room, he slid the bamboo and paper door open and then went into the room. Naruto then quickly looked around the room and spotted Koiki, her new instructor Inochi Yamanaka, and Inoichi's wife Hikari Yamanaka already in the onsen. Like Naruto, the other 3 had towels wrapped around themselves for modesty. With a smile on his face, Naruto walked over to the open corner next to Koiki and carefully got in. Once he was sitting down in the warm water, Naruto let out a sigh of contentment as he felt his muscles start to relax. After a moment of silence, Hikari pleasantly said, "Thank you for inviting my husband and I to join you here, Koiki. It's not often that the two of us get the chance to go to one of these places together." This honest compliment caused a small blush to appear on Koiki's face. Quickly getting her blush under control, actually Koiki covered it with a minor genjutsu, but only Naruto was paying enough attention to pick up on it. Koiki said, "Thank you, Mrs. Yamanaka. I like spending time in onsens and I really enjoy talking with my friends while I'm in an onsen. Hopefully we all will be able to be friends or at least good acquaintances." Hikari then nodded her head and said, "You're absolutely right, Koiki. Spending time at the onsens is wonderful, but it is the conversation and the time spent with friends that really make the experience so enjoyable." Mrs. Yamanaka then turned to face Naruto and said, "I must admit, Naruto, that I was a little surprised that Koiki invited you to join us. No offense meant, dear boy, it's just most boys your age tend to be far too immature for mixed company onsen usage. It's all that vagabond Jiraiya and his dirty book's fault that the morals and social expectations in the town have gone downhill. How a good ninja could sink so low I'll never understand. Koike then politely cut Mrs. Yamanaka off by saying, "Very true, Mrs. Yamanaka. That was exactly why I didn't invite my teammates, because I knew they couldn't behave themselves. Naruto, on the other hand, treats women with respect and tends to act by the older social code. You won't find him shopping at Happy's bookstore or at one of the ever-moving peepholes that develop at the open-air baths." Inoichi then calmly said, "As much as I don't want to admit it, Koike, you're right. The other two members of the team, while they might be very good ninjas for Green Genin, have much to be desired when it comes to certain habits of theirs." Then, as if he sensed a slight hostility at that fact, Inoichi glanced over to Naruto and then said, "You don't have to worry, Koike. I'll make sure that those two stay in line during our missions." Even though Inoichi had been talking to Koike, the message had really been for Naruto. Hikari then turned to look at Naruto again and she said, "Oh dear, oh dear. I'm so sorry, Naruto, that we've been ignoring you in our conversation. It's just so impolite to ignore someone in a place like this." Naruto just let out a small smile and said, "It's perfectly alright, Mrs. Yamanaka. You and Koike were having a conversation and I just had nothing to contribute to it. No ill will was intended, and the conversation would have eventually changed to something that I could add to." Mrs. Yamanaka smiled when she heard that, and she said, "You are a dear, Naruto." She then looked at Koike and said, "I can see that you've definitely trained him well, Koike. Several of my friends at the Ladies' Card Club would just love to get suggestions from you. There are just too many young rascals in my dear Ino's class, and I know that my friends would be just delighted if their sons were half as behaved as Naruto is." As Mrs. Yamanaka continued to drone on, and Inoichi just gave the younger pair a sheepish smile. The next hour continued in much the same manner. Mrs. Yamanaka would dominate the conversation, while the other three would offer short responses. About 40 minutes after Naruto arrived, the Yamanakas had to leave to check up on something at home. Once they were gone, Koike turned to Naruto and said, "Sorry about that, Naruto. I didn't know that Mrs. Yamanaka would have such an exuberant personality." Shrugging his shoulders, Naruto just said, "This is the first time that you or I have ever had an in-depth conversation with Mrs. Yamanaka. Except for how she monopolized the conversation and drove it, she seems to be a fairly decent person. My only real problem with her is some of the company she apparently keeps. Did you notice that during the conversation Mrs. Yamanaka stated that 4 of the biggest gossips in Konoha are her close friends? Considering the fact that the last one of those 4 gossips is known for distorting what she hears, it almost a sure bet that there will be a rumor going about Konoha that you and I are having a steamy secret romance." Koike let out a small laugh and replied between giggles, Naruto, your information is out of date. You and me have a steamy secret romance was last month's rumor of choice for the no-good busybodies. This month's rumor is that I'm about to overthrow my uncle and you're coming along to be my new king/boy toy." The Princess Kunoichi then shifted to the other side of the onsen so that she and Naruto were across from each other. Once she had settled in her new seat, Koike casually said, "It a curse that's attached to our station. Busybodies love juicy, scandalous stories to tell each other, and since you and I are from a high station, stories about us are juicier even if they're untrue." Naruto then gave a short snort and stated, "That might be true, Koike. However, it doesn't change the fact that those rumors can be extremely irritating. I'm just glad that none of those busybodies knows about what my bloodline can truly do. The tall tales that would likely generate from that would just be ridiculous." That earned Naruto an understanding nod from Koike. When she had first witnessed Naruto's bloodline all those years ago during the Kumo assassination attempt, she had been frightened by it. Her fear, however, had disappeared the next day after that incident when Naruto had come over to check up on her. Naruto's innocent concern for her had completely removed all of the fear and uneasiness that Koike had because of his bloodline within moments. Although the princess never admitted it, there was just something about Naruto that could always calm her down when she was troubled. Sarutobi looked down the kitchen table at the assortment of friends gathered and he jovially said, "I must say this is quite the honor, Naruto. I've awarded Chunin and Jonin ranks many times as Hokage, but it is so rare that I get invited to a celebration for someone becoming a Chunin." The other people at the table, Naruto, Koike, the Yamanakas, the other 2 members of Koike's Genin squad, and Kakashi all smiled at the old leader's words. Last month Inoichi had allowed his team to go to the Chunin exams that were being held in Kumo. Koike, who had taken second place in the final tournament against Yujito-ni, was one of the 4 genin who had been promoted, and she was the only one from Konoha. When Naruto had heard about Koike's promotion, he had whipped together this congratulation party for when she arrived home. Thanks to Sarutobi's praise, everyone's attention was drawn to Naruto. Upon seeing everyone's attention on him, Naruto warmly said, "Your family to me and Koike, Grandpa Sarutobi. I'd have to be a pretty big jerk to not invite you here since this is a gathering of Koiki's family and friends. This honest reply earned Naruto a round of cheers from the rest of the adults at the table. Kakashi then said while doing his patented eye smile, I want to thank you Naruto for allowing me to come over. It seems like only yesterday that Koiki was just a scared little princess hiding under the blankets of the sleigh as I got her away from that castle. She may still be a princess like she was all those years ago, but she'll not scared anymore, and she's definitely not little either. At that moment one of Koiki's teammates snorted and said, You're right about Koiki not being little anymore Kakashi. The only way you could say that she's still little is if you were to compare her to Tsunade and her measurements. As soon as he said that remark, Koiki's teammate's face started to pale. Everyone at the table then watched as the genin's face became ghost white, and the boy quickly fainted. His unconscious slumped-over body then started to twitch like he was having a nightmare. Sarutobi, Kakashi, and Inoichi immediately sent a semi-accusing glance over to Naruto. In a casual manner Naruto shrugged his shoulders and said, What? I have specifically stated before that my house is a per-free zone. No porn, peeping, or provocative comments about any ladies are allowed unless the offending person wants to try out one of my new genjutsus. Any of these actions directed against a friend of mine earns the offender an especially nasty genjutsu. This earned Naruto the vocal approval of the girls at the table. Once things had calmed down a bit Kakashi said, You're defiantly coming along splendidly with your genjutsu Naruto. Considering how far you've come in it, along with the fact that you haven't neglected your ninjutsu or your taijutsu, it's surprising that you haven't applied for early graduation. Your time definitely seems to be wasted with you being a fourth-year student instead of being a genin. In a calm manner Naruto replied, Applying for early graduation is completely out of the question. If I did that the villagers would all talk about how the Yandame's son is showing his father's talent by finishing the academy early. At the same time there would be resentment many of newer ninjas who would be my companions. They would most likely feel that I used my father's name to advance while they sweated to earn their positions. Overall, it's just easier for everyone if I stay in the academy and graduate with my class next year. Principal Miyagi was working in his office when he heard a polite knock on his door. Looking up from the papers on his desk the old teacher pleasantly said, Please come in. The door then opened and Naruto walked into the office. In his usual wise and pleasant voice Miyagi said, young Namikaze. It's good to see you here on time. Please sit down. Naruto walked over to bench in Miyagi's office and sat down. Then Naruto calmly said, Principal Miyagi, why was I asked to come to your office? If it's so you can ask me to take the graduation exam early, my answer is as always no. Miyagi shook his head and said, Not this time Naruto, although the thought had crossed my mind. As much as I hate to admit it, the academy isn't helping you to further your abilities. If I may ask, is that why you haven't been applying yourself as hard on the tests this year as you did the last 4 years? Your teachers have been coming to me and complaining about how you are holding back in class. Why is it that you seem to be trying to get the number 2 position in class Naruto? After letting out a small sigh Naruto started to explain what he was doing. Principal Miyagi, it is a well-known fact that only completely sure team lineup upon graduation is the Rookie of the Year, the top kunoichi, or the top guy in the class as was the case 2 years ago, and the so-called dead last. This year the top kunoichi is Tenten while Rock Lee due to his illness is practically assured to be the dead last. If I was to fully apply myself and take the number 1 slot in the class those two would be my teammates. Now I have no problem at the thought of working with those two for at least a year or 2 out of the academy. However, there is a reason why I am doing what I am doing. Naruto's face then got more somber as he continued on, I'm sure that you remember the incident that occurred 5 months ago Principal Miyagi involving Niji Hyuga's father. Miyagi nodded his head as he remembered the incident, or rather the scandal in question. Hisashi Hyuga had been the bodyguard of one of the Hyuga elders and the two had been trapped in a cave for days due to an attack. The elder in question had used the caged bird seal to kill Hisashi so that the elder could prolong the duo's scant food supplies. When this fact had came up during the investigation 2 things had happened. 1. The elder in question had been publicly put to death by fire jutsu and 2. The Hyugas accepted the fact that they needed to know more than just their feigned juken. Once Naruto saw that Miyagi had mentally gone over the whole incident he continued on. Due to that incident Principal Miyagi, Niji Hyuga's personality is becoming darker. I have noticed that out all the students in the class Lee and to a lesser extent Tenten are able to return Niji to the boy he was before this incident. Since Niji was originally the second best student in the class I have been correcting my work so that it is just slightly below his. Thus I am trying to get him to become the Rookie of the Year so that he will have teammates who will keep him grounded. For a few moments Miyagi just sat where and was in silence carefully considering what Naruto had just told him. The teachers probably wouldn't have caught on to the fact that Naruto had pointed out simply because it was impossible to catch all the nuances of all the students in class. Also, what Naruto was saying did make perfect sense to Miyagi. After considering everything for a few moments Miyagi said, Your reason is perfectly acceptable Naruto. You may continue to hold back if you so wish so that Niji Hyuga can gain the teammates to help him. Only next time, Naruto, talk to a teacher before you handle a problem like this in the future. Naruto got up, gave Miyagi a respectful bow, and then said, "Understood, Principal Miyagi. I honestly wasn't planning on doing something like this again. May I please return to class now?" Miyagi nodded his head and motioned for Naruto to leave. After Naruto had left the office, Miyagi smiled and said to himself, "You defiantly are your father's son, Naruto Namikaze. I can still remember when I was just a teacher here and your father was a student. Both you and he show great concern for your classmates. That's the hardest lesson for you kids here to learn at the academy." Naruto walked into his old academy classroom dressed in his casual ninja outfit. The only difference between Naruto's casual ninja outfit and his regular ninja outfit was the number of weapons/traps that he was packing. Once Naruto was inside the classroom, he immediately headed to his old seat and sat down. Today was the day that he and the rest of the recently graduated ninjas would be assigned their genin teams. About 20 minutes after Naruto walked into the room, the class's old homeroom teacher arrived. The old teacher looked at the assembled genin and started to give a speech. Naruto ignored the speech because he had already heard this speech, or at least a variant of it, from Koiki. According to Koiki, the purpose of the farewell speech was to help prepare the students for the teamwork test that the Jonin teachers would be giving out. The speech was in effect the, hopefully, last lesson that the academy teachers would give to their students. Once the speech was over, the teacher began to call out teams. Naruto calmly listened to the teams, waiting to hear who his teammates would be. After a few minutes, the teacher got to Naruto's team. Team 10 will be Naruto Namikaze, Mimi Yamano, Gendo Sakakibara with Ebisu as the Jonin instructor. When Naruto heard who his teammates were, he had to use all of his self-control to keep from cussing. Out of all of the people in his class that he could have had for teammates, he had to get those two. Gendo Sakakibara had a Sub-Zero personality, and didn't have a caring or compassionate bone in his body. That boy didn't interact with his peers even though Naruto and others in the class had tried to be his friends a while ago. Also, Gendo seemed to hate anyone who he saw as more powerful than him, even though it was practically impossible to see the signs of hate on Gendo. It had been whispered among some of the students that Gendo had gone before the school's psychiatric council to see whether or not his mentality made him too dangerous to be in the ninja program. Of course, that was only a stupid schoolyard rumor, but the fact was that Gendo was not a person that someone else could get along with. On the other hand, Mimi Yamano was, well, she could be the poster girl for what many men seem to view kunoichi as. Mimi was very talented, and she had a decent head for poisons. Given the right training, Mimi could become a very capable Black Widow kunoichi. However, Mimi was hampered by the fact that she was a very obsessed fangirl who was focused on Niji. This fangirl obsession, along with her snobbish personality, caused her to refuse to use her emerging seduction techniques, which were her only useful abilities outside of the academy abilities, on anyone except Niji. Whenever Niji rejected Mimi's attempts at his affections, which was almost every day, she would be a royal pain in the ass to anyone near her. Naruto was quickly trying to figure out why he had those two as his teammates. The answer as to why they were his teammates was quite obvious to Naruto. Both Gendo and Mimi had very high grades in class. Coupled with the fact that Gendo and Mimi's skills leaned towards infiltration, it wasn't that far a stretch for the three of them to be assigned to the same genin cell. Many of the older ninjas probably expected that the members of Team 10 would become fast friends, or at least have the professionalism to work with each other until they became friends. On paper, Team 10 looked like a solid green genin team that would do wonderfully once the three genins started working together. However, the way things look on paper and how things actually are can be two totally different things. This team could become a very good team, but Naruto figured that Team 10 flourishing probably wouldn't happen. Still, Naruto was willing to try and was determined that it wouldn't be because of him that Team 10 floundered. Ebisu walked into the classroom just as Naruto stopped analyzing his teammates. The man pushed his glasses up his nose and then said, "Team 10, come with me." Naruto calmly got out of his seat and headed over to Ebisu, only stopping for a moment to give his former teacher a polite nod. Mimi jumped out of her seat, cheerfully walked down the rows of desks, paused to wink at Niji, and then sulked as she joined up with her teammates because Niji didn't acknowledge her wink. Gendo got up and coldly walked over to where his team was. Once all the members of Team 10 were together, Ebisu calmly led them to a private alcove and said, "All right then, you three. My name is Ebisu, the elite Jonin tutor. I have tutored many Chunins and older genins so that they could advance in rank. You three may be my first full-time genin pupils, but I can assure you that I know exactly what I am doing. Now then, I want each of you to say your names, at least one thing that you like, and what your dream is. This will help you work better as a team in the future." Mimi was the first to answer Ebisu's question. In a cheerful manner she said, "I'll go first. My name is Mimi Yamano. I like flowers, poisons, and Niji Hyuga. My dream for the future is to get Niji to become my boyfriend. When Ebisu heard Mimi's dream of the future, a small sweat drop started to form on the back of his head. Even though it was expected that 2 out of every 3 graduating kunoichis would be more focused on love than being a ninja at this stage in their career, Ebisu had been hoping to not get one of those types of girls. After Mimi had answered Ebisu's questions, Naruto decided to take his turn. In a calm, but still very friendly, manner, Naruto said, "As you know, my name is Naruto Namikaze. I like refining my ninja skills and spending time with my best friend Koiki. My dream for the future is to step out of my father's shadow and be respected by the villagers for my own accomplishments." Ebisu gave a small, almost unnoticeable nod when he heard Naruto's dream. It always was a pain to have to teach self-important ninjas, so Ebisu was glad that Naruto wasn't one of those types. Gendo stood where he was and didn't volunteer anything at first. However, after a few minutes passed and nothing had happened, Gendo realized that Ebisu wouldn't continue until he had answered the questions. With a small scowl on his face, Gendo said, "My name is Gendo Sakakibara. My likes and my dream for the future are both irrelevant to my being on this team." It was obvious that Gendo was not going to give out any more information about himself to the rest of the team, so Ebisu decided to just nod his head and move on. In an authoritative tone, Ebisu said, "Now then, Team 10. Before I start to train you 3 or we take on any missions, you 3 must prove that you truly are worthy of your newly acquired genin ranks. Therefore tomorrow at 9 o'clock sharp I will give you 3 a field test to see whether or not you are really ready to be genin. If you 3 fail my test, you will either be kicked out of the ninja program or sent back to the academy if you are lucky." Koiki stood on the roof of her and Naruto's apartment complex in a bathrobe with a fluffy towel in her hand, looking at the rooftop hut that contained the complex's 4 onsens. Earlier today, Koiki had noticed Naruto coming home in a bad mood as she had headed out to do her grocery shopping. Once she had finished her shopping, Koiki had gone to Naruto's apartment to ask him what was bugging him. Since Naruto hadn't been in his apartment, and he hadn't been at one of his usual training grounds, Koiki figured that he might have come up here to relax. Sensing a single person in the northern onsen, Koiki headed over and gently opened the door to that bath. When Princess turned Ninja opened the door, she saw that her suspicions were correct, as Naruto was currently sitting in the onsen with his back to her. Koiki quietly closed the sliding door, took off her bathrobe, and joined Naruto in the bath. Since it was only Naruto in the onsen with her, Koiki didn't bother to grab a towel for modesty. Back in Snow Country, unisex communal bathing areas were much more common than in Fire Country, and even the royal family had frequently used the common bathing areas. The only reason why Koiki even bothered with a towel for modesty at all when she was at the public bathhouses and onsens was because of the number of males in Fire Country who couldn't control their hormones. Once Koiki was in the onsen, she walked over to where Naruto was and gently placed a hand on his shoulder. The princess wasn't afraid of Naruto's training kicking in and him attacking her, because she knew that with his advanced senses he already knew that she was here. In fact, Koiki knew that it was because of Naruto's enhanced senses that he hadn't reacted to her joining him in the onsen. Naruto had already known that she was there, and he hadn't reacted because he trusted her. Very gently, Koiki slowly began to massage Naruto's shoulders. Like all of Konoha's kunoichi, Koiki knew the basics of how to give a massage. As the minutes progressed, Koiki worked all of the knots out of Naruto's back, leaving him more relaxed than he had been. Once Naruto was relaxed, Koiki ended the massage and said, "What's the matter, Naruto? You're usually not this upset." Naruto turned around and while looking Koiki in the eye said, "It's my team, Koiki. I just don't see how we will be able to pass Ebisu's test unless it is ridiculously easy. Gendo is a loner who doesn't care about or show an understanding about the concept of teamwork. As for Mimi, she's one of those kunoichi. After Ibsa left us, I tried to get my teammates to go out for lunch so that we could have some team bonding. You know, try and get them ready for whatever day of teamwork test is to be issued." However, neither of them cared about getting a bite to eat or about getting to know each other as teammates. Koiki lovingly wrapped her arms around Naruto and gently said, "I understand, Naruto. You're worried that your teammates won't be able to work together so that you 3 can pass. To be honest, I was afraid that my teammates and I wouldn't be able to pass our teamwork test. Hopefully your team will be able to pass your teacher's test. After all, most teams don't look like they'll pass the teamwork test until they are actually tested." Secretly though, Koiki was worried about Naruto and his team. As a kunoichi, she had access to several methods of persuading her teammates to work together that Naruto just didn't have access to. Luckily for Koiki, her words had just the effect that she wanted them to have on Naruto. A small confident smile appeared on Naruto's face, and then he said, "You're right, Koiki. My team could very well pass the teamwork test even if it doesn't look like it will at first glance. After all, one has to look hard to see things as they really are and not how they appear to be." Naruto and Koiki then spent half an hour chit-chatting and relaxing as they usually did whenever they were in the onsen. After a while, Naruto left the onsen to go prepare his dinner. He had offered to make some dinner for Koiki, but she told him that she wasn't hungry. Once Naruto left the room, Koiki just smiled and said, "You truly are something else, Naruto. I don't know of any person who is as skilled as you are compared to your peers and is also concerned about your peers as well. All too often Koyuki had encountered geniuses who were the absolute worst kind of people to work with. Koyuki stopped thinking about that, and then she looked down at her body. Thanks to constant training, eating right, and a little bit of genetic luck, Koyuki was growing into a very beautiful woman. Some of her crasser male peers had claimed that she was prime real estate, any man lucky enough to stake a claim when they thought she wasn't within earshot. Naturally, that comment had enraged Koyuki and the other nearby kunoichi that had heard it. The doctors still weren't entirely sure if that particular man and his friends would be able to breed or not after the beating they had received from Konoha's Kunoichi Association. Even though the crass comments were aggravating, there was one benefit in Koyuki's mind to her having her current to die for figure. Over the past several months, Koyuki had seen a small, but growing look of desire in Naruto's eyes whenever they spent time in the baths. At first, Koyuki had been afraid that Naruto was going to turn into a hormonal idiot like her teammate, and that his previous good behavior was because he hadn't been as physically mature as she had thought. To Koyuki's joy, Naruto had not turned into a hormonal idiot, and he had remained as mature as ever. The look in Naruto's eyes simply showed that, at least unconsciously, he recognized that she was a very attractive young woman. Ever since Koyuki had realized these things about Naruto, she had begun to plan. Naruto was her closest and dearest friend. Koyuki's friendships among the other kunoichi all paled when compared to her friendship with Naruto. Over time, Koyuki had discovered that she wanted more out her relationship with Naruto than simple friendship, and so she set about to win Naruto's heart. Unlike other young women, Koyuki planned to win Naruto by small actions that would cause Naruto to start thinking of her as a lover/close friend as opposed to a sister figure/close friend. It was slow and at times aggravating work, but Koyuki was already seeing signs that Naruto was making that mental shift in thinking without even realizing it. Team 10 was at their assigned training field, standing in a line facing Ebisu, wondering what sort of test they would be given. Ebisu pulled out 2 rolled-up scrolls and said, "This is your test, Team 10. Written on one of these scrolls are directions to a location, and written on the other scroll is a list of what is at that location. You must get both scrolls from me and make it back to the academy before noon, or you fail. You may use whatever force necessary to get the scrolls from me. The test starts now." As soon as Ebisu said that the test had begun, all of his would-be students bolted off to hide. Naruto had quickly hidden among the branches of a nearby tree, and was using genjutsu to make it harder for his location to be discovered. From his vantage point, Naruto was able to spot Gendo hiding behind a rock and Mimi hiding in some bushes. Almost immediately, Naruto tried to think of how he could get Gendo and Mimi to work with him to complete this test. It was obvious to Naruto that Mimi would be the easiest to convince to work with him. All he had to do was wait for her to try to get the scrolls on her own and then help her out when she started to fail. Thus he sat down and carefully observed Mimi to see when she would make her move. About 10 minutes after the test had started, Mimi made her move for the scrolls. Mimi might have been a fangirl, but Naruto was glad to see that she had some common sense. She had obviously realized that there was no way she could charm Ebisu into giving her the scrolls and was trying to sneak up on Ebisu using the bushes to help screen her movements. As soon as Mimi came to the edge of the bushes, she threw a pair of shuriken at Ebisu's legs. Ebisu was a jonin for a reason, and he had detected Mimi's approach long ago. In a calm manner, he jumped over the pair of shuriken and turned in midair to look at Mimi. "Good attempt, Mimi," Ebisu called out in his instructor tone. "However, you need to learn to mask your approach better." After Ebisu performed a short series of hand signs, he said, "Ninja art, hell viewing." Right as Ebisu announced the name of the jutsu, Naruto made his move. Thanks to his bloodline and his extensive studies of genjutsu, Naruto had created several unique genjutsus. From his hiding spot, Naruto stretched out his left hand, moved his ring and middle ringers away from each other, and then crossed both pairs of fingers on that hand. In a very calm manner, Naruto then said, "Ninja art, Bodhisattva." This particular genjutsu of Naruto's allowed him to communicate with a person who was trapped in a genjutsu. Upon entering Ebisu's genjutsu, Avatar Naruto immediately noticed that he was down on the ground right next to Mimi. Since the surroundings weren't some sort of hellish plane, which Naruto had been expecting to be the case since Ebisu had only used the weakest of the hell genjutsus, Naruto started to look for Mimi's trouble. When Avatar Naruto spotted Niji lying on the ground dead, he almost smacked his head. Of course, to a fangirl like Mimi, the sight of her crush/obsession dead would be debilitating. Avatar Naruto then walked over to where Mimi was and slapped her in the face. While normally Naruto wouldn't strike a girl unless it was in a spar, he needed to shock Mimi back to her senses so that he could talk to her. Just like Naruto had hoped, Mimi snapped out of her horror-induced stupor. She then glared at Naruto and said, "How can you namikaze? Niji's over there dead and you slap me? What's wrong with you?" Avatar Naruto calmly stood in front of Mimi and let her vent for a second. However, he quickly cut her off since he didn't want both of them to be vulnerable more than they had to be. "Think, Mimi, just think. Niji is on Team 9, and their training ground is on the other side of the village. Why on earth would Niji's body here if he's with his team? Don't say that Niji's here because he wanted to watch you, Mimi. He's too duty-bound to shirk his responsibilities to go watch you. The gears in Mimi's head started to spin as she thought about what Naruto had just told her. While the more fangirlish part of her mind wanted to say that Niji would come here to watch her because of true love, the more rational part of her mind seriously considered what Naruto had told her. After all, Niji's duty-bound personally was one of the reasons why she loved him. So if Niji couldn't be here, why was his dead body in front of her? Mimi then turned her head to look at Naruto's avatar form. Unlike the normal Naruto, his avatar form in the ninja art, Bodhisattva, was slightly blurry and had a sort of ghostly spirit quality to it. Naruto's image started to frighten Mimi, but then Naruto spoke. "Don't worry, Mimi, everything will be alright. I am Naruto, or rather I am Naruto's consciousness projected into the genjutsu that you are trapped via my own genjutsu. If it helps you, think of me as an echo of Naruto that has been sent to help you out." Although Mimi had never heard of such a jutsu, even if it seemed to have been inspired by the Yamanaka clan jutsus, she accepted that she had been told the truth. At the academy, no one was more skilled or knowledgeable about genjutsu than Naruto. In fact, Mimi and many others had heard rumors that even Kurenai had trouble with some of Naruto's genjutsus. Thus she could easily believe that what Naruto was telling her was the truth. However, before Mimi could do anything to dispel the genjutsu, it started to collapse apparently on its own. She turned to look at Avatar Naruto, hoping that he would know what was going, and was scared when she saw the confused look on his face. Ebisu stood a few feet away from Mimi's unconscious form, but still close enough to carefully observe her. He had noticed a slight change in the feel of the genjutsu he had cast on Mimi, and had to work hard to repress a smirk. Before Ebisu had taken this assignment to teach Team 10, he had been given a complete briefing on his 3 potential students. Included in that briefing was a description of all the jutsus the students knew that anyone in the ninja force was aware of, and thus he knew about Naruto's ninja art, Bodhisattva. The fact that Naruto was currently using that jutsu of his to try and help Mimi out was a major plus to Ebisu. It meant that Naruto had already figured out the real reason behind this test. Normally the genins only figured out that the key was teamwork when they were beaten by the jonin instructor. Now all he had to do was wait for Mimi and Gendo to show an acceptable level of teamwork, and this team would be official. Suddenly Ebisu's danger sense went off, and he turned around to see a dozen kunai flying at him. Normally Ebisu would just dodge away from the kunai, but if he dodged, then the kunai would hit Mimi's unconscious body. For a second Ebisu was frozen in horror, since he had never imagined that anyone would so recklessly endanger their teammates so. Luckily for both him and Mimi, Ebisu was able to get over his shock, and he quickly grabbed Mimi, carrying her to safety. Due to the fact that Ebisu was too busy carrying Mimi away to maintain the genjutsu, Mimi started to wake up. Mimi blinked her eyes and said, "Instructor Ebisu, what's going on?" "I was talking with Naruto, at least I think it was Naruto," and then everything started to become fuzzy. While Ebisu was glad to know that Naruto had been helping Mimi out just like he had believed, it didn't temper the rage that was building inside of him. Ebisu might appear at times to be a snobbish person, and he knew it, but there were certain things that could send him into a rage. Endangering a teammate was at the top of the list of things that could make Ebisu froth like a mad dog. In a loud and cold tone, Ebisu announced, "This test is over." Sarutobi sat at his desk with a stack of reports in front of him that he had been reading. The reports were psychological reports, personal stats, and Ebisu's report on the members of the now-defunct Team 10. When Sarutobi had read Gendo's psychological report, the old leader felt a rage start to grow. Gendo had been the one who launched the kunai attack that had endangered Mimi. Apparently Gendo had been planning on using Ebisu's protectiveness to keep the instructor from avoiding the attack. Sarutobi's real problem with the little punk came with the fact that Gendo had said that had Mimi died because of Ebisu moving out of the way, it would have been of no real consequence. Why hadn't the psychologist at the academy reported Gendo's mental condition? A person who couldn't connect to their emotions at all and thus didn't care about what they did or how it affected others should not have been allowed into the ninja program. Ever since Orochimaru's defection, Sarutobi had insisted that the ninja applicants be monitored constantly so that new Orochimarus couldn't arise. Until today, Sarutobi had never questioned the efficiency of the academy monitors. Well, those guys better have reserved a hospital room, because Sarutobi was planning on sending them on an all-expense-pounded stay at the hospital. Sarutobi turned his attention back to the reports in front of him and tried to figure out what he should do with Naruto, Mimi, and Gendo. Well, actually, he was trying to decide what to do with Naruto and Mimi. Gendo already had a one-way ticket to the psychiatric ward. Given Mimi's stats and her comments during the after-test investigation, Sarutobi thought it would be a good idea to send Mimi back to the academy. She had a lot of potential, and with her new wisdom she should be able to unlock more of that potential. Every time Sarutobi tried to figure out what he should do about Naruto, he got a headache. Naruto had all of the necessary skills and the right mentality to be a ninja. Truth was, Naruto had been ready to graduate 2 years ago. Miyagi had actually sent a private request to Sarutobi asking the old leader to find some way to get Naruto onto the ninja force. The reason for this rather unexpected request was that Miyagi didn't want to hold Naruto back because the boy already knew everything that was taught at the academy. Twirling a bit in the chair to face the bookshelf, Sarutobi pulled out a volume of Konoha's rules and regulations that covered ninja admittance. After 20 minutes of searching, Sarutobi found just the regulation that he needed to get Naruto into the ninja corps. The Nidaime had decreed that if a potential genin showed that he was ready to become a ninja while the rest of that genin's team were not ready, then that genin could become a genin on the reserve list. Sure, being a genin on the reserve list wasn't the greatest thing in the world, but it was a whole lot better than going back to the academy. Genin on the reserve list were just that, reserves. They had no teams, no assigned teachers, and they could only take D-rank missions. A genin normally went on the reserve list if they had been out of commission for several months because of injuries, or they had been demoted. Whenever an established genin team lost a member because of death or promotion and reassignment, a reserve genin was assigned to the team. There were never more than 2 reserve genins at any given time because as soon as a third genin appeared on the list, a new genin team would be formed. Just as Sarutobi was about to get up to leave his office so he could talk to Naruto, the old leader noticed a report amid his documents that he hadn't checked out yet. Since it could be something important about Team 10, Sarutobi forced himself to pick up the report and read it. To Sarutobi's surprise, the report wasn't actually a report, but rather it was a formal request by the head of the Hunter Ninja Division to have Naruto transferred to the Hunter Ninja Division. In Konoha, the various ninja jobs were broken down into 3 major groups. The first group was made up of the ANBU, the interrogators, and the Hunter Ninjas. Next there were the support ninjas like medic ninjas, academy teachers, and the town guards. Finally there was the majority of the ninja corps who handled various mission requests from the village's customers. When a student graduated from the academy, they were automatically placed into the pool of ninjas available to carry out a client's mission. The other 2 groups gained new members by transfer requests either from the ninjas themselves or from the divisional head. Normally these 2 groups usually only made a request for someone to be transferred to them when the ninja in question was a jonin or a chunin. However, it wasn't too uncommon for a divisional head in one of the 2 groups to ask for a genin who showed exceptional promise in that particular field. Given Naruto's abilities, particularly the abilities of the Shinigami bloodline, it wasn't too surprising that the Hunter Corps wanted him. Apparently the head of the Hunter Corps wanted Naruto in the Corps bad enough that he didn't what rank the boy was. Sarutobi carefully considered what Naruto could expect if he was put in the Hunter Corps. As a genin, Naruto would only be assigned to trash detail, as the hunters called the hunting down of former academy students who had gone bad and missing genin. It was an important job because rouges from those 2 groups could cause a lot of trouble, but it wasn't as glorious as hunting A, B, or even C rank missing ninjas. The old leader looked at the options that were available to Naruto, and he couldn't make up his mind about what to do. Should he send Naruto back to the academy, which he thought was rather pointless? Put Naruto on the reserve list and leave the boy basically in limbo for at least 6 months, hopefully? Or should he stick Naruto into the Hunter Corps where he would have to stay for a minimum of 2 years? Finally, Sarutobi decided to tell Naruto about the options and let Naruto decide where to go. It was the boy's career after all, so he should have some say in it. Naruto sitting in front of his desk looking at the papers that Ebisu had handed him an hour ago. According to Ebisu, Naruto's performance during the test along with his academy grades had prompted this unexpected situation. Ebisu had also assured Naruto that this was not just some political jockeying intended to show off the Namake's heir. When Ebisu had asked why Naruto thought that such a thing could be occurring, he simply said, "Observe a single council session." Most of the people on the council would pole dance on hot coals if they thought it might help their political position. After Ebisu had visited the bathroom to remove his lunch because of the image of Kahara pole dancing, he had pulled out Naruto's shinobi rulebook and showed the clause that was being used. Ebisu had also pointed out that the clause had been used in the past, so while Naruto would be in a rare situation within the ninja force, it wouldn't be a unique position. With that explained, Ebisu had left Naruto alone, vowing to find a way to pay Naruto back for that horrible image. Of course, Naruto wasn't really worried that Ebisu would succeed. A genjutsu master, or someone trying to gain that rank, needed to have a very good imagination and be able to pay attention to details. Returning to the matter at hand, Naruto looked at the 3 forms trying to decide what he should do. Going back to the academy left a very bitter taste in Naruto's mouth. Also, though of the pitying glances that the villagers were practically guaranteed to give him because he was the Yandaime's son who had been sent back because his teammate was a mistake, made him ill. However, if he went back to the academy, he would be able to socialize with his new potential teammates and learn more about them. Next, he could go on to the reserve genin list. The thought of basically being in limbo with regards to being a ninja didn't sit well with Naruto. A genin without a team could only do D-rank missions, and everyone knew that those missions were a special level of hell that was reserved for pain-in-the-ass ninjas who didn't know their place. Still, it would give him time to train further in his abilities and give him access to several resources that were unavailable to academy students. That would allow him to progress until he was able to join a team. Finally, there was the Hunter Corps offer. If he accepted it, then he would be fully in the ninja force, have access to training that he wouldn't have otherwise until he was at least a chunin, and would be stepping out from his father's shadow. However, the downside to the Hunter Corps offer were the facts that he'd be committed to them for the next 2 years before he could transfer out, and that his missions would almost always involve death. Fitting really, Naruto morbidly thought, considering what his bloodline was like and who created it. Each option before him had its own benefits and disadvantages. Such was the way of the world. The question, Naruto thought, wasn't which choice had the most benefits, or the least disadvantages. It was which option was the best one for him and his career. After carefully looking at each form, Naruto's gaze drifted to a picture on his desk of him and Koyuki. That picture reminded Naruto that he and Koyuki had promised that they would always help each other. Being reminded that she would support him no matter what, Naruto was able to make his choice, and he pulled out the appropriate form. The sun was just starting to shine as Naruto walked into the Hokage Tower. In his hand was the proper paperwork to make his choice completely legal. Due to how early it was, the young Namikes didn't encounter anyone in the halls as he walked towards the mission assignment/multipurpose registration room. As expected, the night shift operative, because one never knew when a mission might be needed, was still at his desk. Naruto walked up the semi-sleeping Chunin and said, "Excuse me." Walking up from his dreary state, the Chunin said, "Huh? Oh, hello there, respectable heir. What can I do for you?" Naruto immediately handed over the paperwork to the ninja, who started to inspect it. As he was inspecting the forms, the ninja said, Interesting. So you're joining the Hunter Corps? Strange, not too many young people want to join them. Still, with the options you had, I guess I can understand. You sure you want me to fill this for you? I could shred this if you wanted and give you another form to go on the genin reserves." Naruto quickly shot the secretary a look that told the man to just shut up and file the paperwork. Out of the 3 choices that he had, the Hunter Corps was the best choice. Or rather, it was the choice that he could live with the best. Going back to the academy would have been hell to Naruto, and the thought of being on the reserve list just didn't sit well with him. Sure, Naruto didn't like the idea that every mission he would be on out of the village was guaranteed to be an assassination mission. However, he could live with that. Once the paperwork was properly filed, Naruto was handed a transcript that stated that the paperwork had been filed and told to give it to the receptionist at the Hunter Corps floor. Letting out a small grumble about bureaucratic shenanigans, Naruto took the transcript and headed towards the Hunter Corps floor. 5 minutes later, the young ninja was standing in front of the Hunter receptionist dealing with that stopping point of bureaucratic hell. Finally, after what seemed like hours, even though it was only about 20 minutes, Naruto had everything set to go and was told to go to the headhunter's office. Just like everyone else who had ever heard the title of the person in charge of the Hunter Corps, Naruto let out a groan and wished that the Shodai's bad pun would be put to rest. Naruto quickly made his way down the hall and knocked on the headhunter's door. Almost instantly he got a polite but short, "Come in." When Naruto opened the door, he saw the headhunter Azusa Yuzuki sitting behind his desk working on an assortment of documents. Azusa looked up from his paperwork and said, "You're a little early, Namikes. Try to keep that up while you work under me. Now that you are in the Hunter Corps, I expect that you will conduct yourself in a manner that befits a hunter ninja." Azusa then turned to his right and called out, "Yugogo, come in here." A few seconds later, a purple-haired girl, which Naruto suspected was related to Azusa since only the Yuzuki clan had that shade of hair, walked in and kneeled. Azusa then said, "Yugogo, I am hereby assigning you as Namike's mentor. Take the boy down to the armory, get him a mask, and start his training regime. I want him on the active list in 60 days. Is that clear?" Yugogo bowed her head and said, "That is understood, sir." She then got up, turned to Naruto, and said, "Follow me." Once they were out of the office and the door was closed, Yugogo said, "I hope you weren't too put off by my uncle's manner. Azusa believes that everyone who joins the Hunter Corps is to be treated as a newbie no matter what they've done as a ninja before joining. Until you prove your worth to him, he'll only refer to you by your last name in that slightly disdainful tone of his." Naruto gave a small smile and said, "No apologies are needed, Ms. Yuzuki. Actually, I prefer your uncle's attitude as it's a lot more practical than the villager's attitude. As long as he judges me based on my own merits, I'll be happy." Nodding her head, Yugogo calmly said, "I understand, Naruto. Please, when we're not in the field, call me Yugogo. I don't like standing on formalities, and I also feel that people in a student/mentor relationship should be able to feel at ease with each other. Now follow me. The Hunter Corps armory isn't part of the Hokage Tower but is in one of the buildings nearby." Once they got to the armory, Yugogo said, "Now Naruto, just go over to one of the crates and pick up a blank mask. Remember, until you have at least 10 kills under your belt C rank or above, you can't decorate the mask. Although most of the villagers assumed that only A and B wore painted masks, the Hunter Corps also used painted masks. Unlike the A and BU, painted hunter masks were all custom jobs designed by the hunter in question. These unique masks were a common way that people outside of the Corps referred to hunters out in the field. After Naruto had collected a blank mask, Yugogo said, "Since I'm your mentor, I'm going to start from the basics, Naruto. There are 6 classifications of missing ninja used by Konoha and most other hidden villages. Those 6 are S, A, B, C, D, and E. S-rank missing ninjas are the most dangerous and are considered to have the power of the average Kage, or someone like the Sannin. A-rank missing ninjas are considered to have the power of an average Jonin, and so on down to E-rank, which are runaways and dropouts of the ninja academy who decide to use their incomplete training to cause trouble. Currently, you are only qualified to hunt D and E-rank targets by yourself. As you progress in your skills, you will become qualified to hunt higher-ranking enemies. Also, you may at times be called upon to participate in a pack hunt. Usually pack hunts are only called when an S-rank criminal has been spotted nearby, and you won't be called for any of those hunts. However, pack hunts for A and B-rank criminals do happen when we need those criminals dead ASAP, and all we have available are hunters who are only qualified for lower-ranking targets. Now, for next 60 days or so, you're going to be reporting here every day for a stick training regime. This regime will include physical training, jutsu recognition, the study of common tactics used by missing ninjas from various countries, and memorization of all hunter codes and information drop points. While you are only qualified for D and E-rank targets, each and every hunt must be conducted with the utmost seriousness. Knowledge that a missing ninja has improved his or her skill is sadly almost always paid for in hunter blood. I don't want you or any of my acquaintances to have to be the ones who pay for that information, Naruto." Azusa looked at the report on his desk and then up at Naruto. The bearded headhunter then said, "According to Yugogo's report, and 2 independent observations, you have achieved basic competency for your rank in the Corps Namikaze. However, it is time to see if your skills in the field are the same as they appear on the training ground." Azusa reached into one of the drawers of his desk and pulled out a large thick manila folder. He then handed the folder to Naruto and said, "This is your first mission, Namikaze. Don't disappoint me." Naruto took the folder from Azusa and said, "Yes, sir." Thanks to Yugogo's mentoring, Naruto knew that his boss liked things to be brief and direct. Apparently, the quickest way to get on Azusa's bad side was to be a windbag, as Yugogo put it. Once Naruto was out of Azusa's office, he headed down the hall to one of the free cubicles. Space was limited on the hunter floor of the tower, so only high-ranking hunters who had been in the Corps for a long time got the honor of having, or even sharing, an office. Everyone else had to make do with cubicles. Finding an open cubicle, Naruto sat down and opened his mission folder. He then pulled out a small report on his target and began to read. Name, Ami Yuzuki. Age 13. Rank, E, possibly low D. Place of birth, Konoha, Fire Country. Reason for extermination, Ami Yuzuki was a bully in the Ninja Academy and was kicked out of the ninja program. She ran away from the Yuzuki clan compound 3 months ago with several low-level family scrolls. Since leaving Konoha, Ami Yuzuki has taken up the life of a mercenary for hire, helping out various gangs in Fire Country. As of last week, Ami Yuzuki was responsible for the loss of 250,000 ryo in cash and an additional 300,000 ryo in property damage. The report went on to state where Ami had been spotted the past 3 months and other information that helped Naruto figure out where she might head to. When the Hunter Corps went after someone, they didn't just show a hunter the picture of a target and tell him or her to go after the target. That sort of thing was the stuff of pulp novels that had no real basis in fact. In real life, the Hunter Corps would provide a hunter with all the information that was available on the hunter's target. This was not only common sense, but it also helped to cut down on hunter deaths. After thoroughly reading all of the information in the packet, Naruto resealed the packet and headed to the receptionist's desk. He then handed the packet over to the receptionist and left to start his hunt. Unlike the other branches of the ninja forces, the Hunter Corps had a good deal of flexibility in terms of mission start times and the duration of the mission. This was because the Hunter Corps missions were very different than client assassinations or any other sort of mission that a ninja could take. Naruto figured that he head home, pack for a 3-week mission, put everything in order for his leaving, and then head out tomorrow morning. Koyuki walked into Naruto's apartment using the spar key that he had given her and saw Naruto's back as he was leaning over and packing something. She then let out a polite cough to get Naruto's attention. Even though both of them knew that the other was in the room, it would be rude for one to start talking without making sure that the other was paying attention. Naruto stopped packing a moment later and turned around to face Koyuki. In his usual friendly manner, Naruto said, "Yes, Koyuki, is there something I can do for you?" While Koyuki was nodding her head, she said, "Yes, Naruto, there is something you can do for me? You can tell me when you were planning on telling me that you had a mission. Her tone as she said this was a cross between anger and worry. She had known for over 2 months that eventually Naruto would be going out on a mission. However, even though Koiki knew it was coming, it didn't make today any easier for her. Naruto gave one of his usual smiles and said, "Don't worry Koiki, everything will be fine. I was going to tell you that I got my mission just as soon as I finished packing. You just came over a little earlier than I was expecting. After all, there's no way I'd leave Konoha without talking to you first Koiki." This honest statement put a small smile on Koiki's face and she said, "I know that Naruto. It's just that I'm worried about you." Koiki's face became a little sorrowful as she continued on, "You're precious to me Naruto. Even though I know that you have enough skill and common sense to complete this mission without getting too hurt, I'm afraid that something will happen to you." Wanting to reassure Koiki, Naruto walked over and gave her a hug. As the young Namikaze hugged her he said, "I know how you feel Koiki. Every time you leave the village on a mission I feel the same way. Even though I know you are an extremely skilled kunoichi, I always become afraid that something terrible will happen to you. That fear doesn't go away. However, over time I've learned to put my trust in you and know that you'll come back to me." To Naruto's complete surprise, Koiki kissed him on the lips and then said, "Thank you for telling me that Naruto. I'll let you finish packing now. Just promise me that you'll let me know as soon as possible when you'll be home. I'll make sure to prepare your second favorite meal for dinner since I'm sure you'll grab plenty of ramen while you're on your mission." This earned Koiki a little pout from Naruto as his ramen craze was a common joke between the two. Koiki then left the slightly confused Naruto alone to complete his packing and headed back to her apartment. Once she was in her apartment, and the front door was closed, the Princess Ninja let out a sigh of contentment. Not only had Naruto managed to calm her fears over his first mission, but she had managed to get Naruto's first kiss. That kiss was also her first kiss, much to her teammates' great annoyance. Koiki gently placed a few fingers on her lips and smiled. Just a little longer, and then Naruto would be hers. Still a little high on her success, the princess walked over to the corner of her apartment where she had set up a small family shrine. Koiki then offered a little incense and said, "I hope you approve of Naruto, father. He's a very sweet and kind young man who sees me as Koiki Kazuhana, his friend, instead of Koiki Kazuhana, princess in exile of Snow Country. Out of the boys and men I've met, he is the only one I've met who I know I can trust with my heart. Naruto is also the only man I want to father my future children." Naruto sat at a table in a small village about 30 miles away from Konoha, nibbling on a bowl of ramen, and was keeping an eye out for his target. According to what Naruto had been able to learn, this town was Ami's home base. From what Naruto had overheard from some people who knew Ami, the girl only left town for a week or so for her delivery runs. She apparently led the people of this village to believe that she a partner in some sort of retrieval business. The last bit of useful information Naruto had managed to glean from that particular conversation was that Ami was due back in town any day now, and that she usually headed over to Rinji's bar for a drink after every run. That was why Naruto was sitting in the restaurant nibbling on his noodles under a minor genjutsu to disguise himself from any prying eyes. He was waiting for Ami to come to him instead of wasting time and energy hunting her. This particular tactic didn't work unless the hunter had a really good intel on the target, but for Ami, who hadn't bothered to hide her tracks at all, it was easy. After a few minutes longer sitting there, Naruto finally spotted his prey. Ami was walking along the sidewalk in a boastful manner with one hand on her sword. Just like he had heard, the runaway headed into Rinji's bar. Knowing that he needed to move, Naruto placed enough money on the table to cover the cost of his meal with a generous tip left over and got up. He then headed over to the bar and weaved his way among the crowd. Sticking to the background, Naruto carefully watched Ami as she had her drinks. This bar was too crowded to attack her, and so the new hunter would have to wait until she left. Much to Naruto's annoyance, Ami spent the next hour or so in the bar getting drunk and being a pest. Finally, the bartender decided that Ami had had enough to drink, and she was escorted out of the bar. Naruto dutifully followed Ami from the shadows and waited for the best time to strike. That time, Naruto thought, would be either when Ami was in her home, where she passed out in an alley. Given how wobbly Ami was walking, Naruto figured that she was more likely to head into an alley. Naruto's hunch quickly came true as Ami staggered into an alley and proceeded to vomit. Once Ami had finished vomiting, she passed out and fell to the ground in her vomit. Quickly looking around to make sure that no one was looking in Ami's direction, Naruto hurried over Ami's passed out form. He then ripped the back of her shirt off and slammed his open hand into her back to begin draining Ami's vitality. With a cold detachment that he had learned by draining wild animals and a few condemned prisoners, Naruto watched as Ami withered and died. After Ami was dead, Naruto pulled out a tanto and cut off her head. He then picked up the severed head and forced some of the collected vitality into the head, returning it to its 13-year-old looks. It had been a skill that Naruto had discovered by accident about a year ago. Since the cells in a person's body continued to live for a while after a person died, Naruto had the ability to use a recently dead person's body. When energy costs were factored in, this was a great deal for Naruto because he could drain his targets, present their normal heads over for identification, and still have a great deal of processed vitality left over. Now Naruto had one last chore to do before he could head home: destroy Ami's body. If this kill had been done in the countryside, disposal would have been a simple fire jutsu. However, any form of fire jutsu was too attention-grabbing for disposal in the city. Even if did get rid of the body, the jutsu would have been noticed by the villagers, and that would alert any nearby missing ninjas that a hunter was in the area. That could mess up someone else's hunt, and that was a major taboo in the core. So how was he supposed to get rid of Ami's body? Even if she had been an E-rank target, her body could still hold some clues to Yuzuki clan jutsus that she stole. Speaking of stolen clan jutsus, Naruto swiped Ami's keys so he could raid her apartment for those scrolls. Even if they were beginner-level scrolls, they needed to be returned to the Yuzuki clan. Finally, Naruto figured out what to do so he could get rid of Ami. He grabbed her cooling corpse and, using the earth release, double suicide decapitation jutsu, burrowed into the earth. When Naruto got about 15 feet into the ground, he let go of Ami's body and headed back to the surface. It was the perfect idea, really. Most people didn't even bother looking for the bodies of dead missing ninjas because those bodies were almost always destroyed. Also, no one would care to look for the body of E-rank trash. Besides, not even Ami's own mother would be able to recognize the girl's body if it was ever found, which was highly unlikely. As he surfaced out of the ground, Naruto thought mission accomplished. Azusa sat at his desk looking at the scrolls that were lazily sitting on it. Those scrolls were the scrolls that his now deceased cousin had stolen. As much as Azusa didn't want to say it, he was proud of how the young Namikaze had handled that mission. It had been deliberately picked in order to see just what sort of hunter Namikaze would turn out to be. Part of Azusa had been expecting that Namikaze would have just dragged Ami back to Konoha. It happened more often than Azusa liked to admit when it came to D and E-ranked hunts. Since Ami was his cousin, it was very likely that anyone sent out to take care of her might try and spare her in an attempt to win his favor. Azusa had seen things like that happen all too often for his tastes. Sarutobi was a fair and just ruler, but due to his old age, several of the department heads had been able to get away with small-scale corruption. The corruption wasn't anything really major, just choice missions to favored workers and that sort of thing. To Azusa's surprise and pleasure, Namikaze had completed his mission and had recovered those scrolls that Ami stole. Truthfully, the scrolls weren't very important, since they didn't contain anything that family wanted to keep secret. Still, their recovery showed that Namikaze could think beyond just what was needed to complete his mission. That was a skill that Azusa didn't see too often, even though he tried to cultivate it. After thinking about everything for a few minutes, Azusa decided to call in Yugogo. Once Yugogo walked in and was kneeling before him, Azusa said, "Rise, Yugogo." As soon as she was on her feet, Azusa continued on. "Your protege returned an hour ago, completing his mission. Namikaze was able to complete his mission above my previous expectations. This speaks highly on you since you are his mentor. I expect young Namikaze to continue to perform at his present level of competence." While some people might believe that Azusa and Hayashi were having some sort of contest for most frozen leader in Konoha, Yugogo knew better. Her uncle's eyes and how he said everything showed that he was proud of her and Naruto. Saying that he expected Naruto to continue his stellar performance was the headhunter's way of saying that he expected Naruto to make it far in the core as long as the boy applied himself. With a pleasant smile on her face, Yugogo said, "I will tell Naruto this, sir. Good day." Yugogo then left to go talk to Naruto, leaving Azusa alone in the room. Once Azusa was alone again, he opened one of the drawers in his desk and pulled out a faded photograph. There were 5 people in the photo: Azusa, Jiraiya, and Jiraiya's genin team. Azusa looked at the photo and stared at the image of his late sister Sito. His sister had died early in the Third Ninja War, and Minato had been the one to bring her body back to the family. Actually, Minato had come back to Konoha half-dead, carrying Sito's body, and had refused to go to the hospital until he had delivered Sito to her family. Before that incident, Azusa had thought that Minato was a reasonable young man. In fact, he even considered the very remote possibility that Minato might be acceptable as a boyfriend for Sito. However, after that incident and after he had finished his grieving, Azusa had seen that special spark that Minato possessed, marking him as a true leader. Azusa had followed and continued to follow Sarutobi out of respect and honor for the old leader. With Minato, Azusa had followed out of admiration and a sense that doing anything else would be stupid somehow. Whenever Azusa looked at the young Namikaze, he saw the boy's father staring back at him. It wasn't that the headhunter was haunted by Minato image, but rather he saw an ember of what had made Minato so great in the young Namikaze. Azusa wanted to see that ember grow into a roaring and protective flame. In his own way, Azusa was trying to help the boy by providing Namikaze with someone to impress under his own merits. It was the least he could do to try and repay Minato for returning his beloved sister to him when their teammate had left her body in enemy hands. Mimi was sitting by the fence on the academy grounds having a picnic lunch with her two friends Ino and Hinata. When school had started up 2 weeks ago, Mimi had been expecting to be at the top of the pecking order like she had in her year. However, things did not go like Mimi had expected. She had forgotten that her precarious position in her class's pecking order had only been achieved by years of hard work, and had taken even more work to maintain. When school had started, Mimi had found herself out in the cold with most of the girls in the class. The fact that she was a reject negated any chance of joining the in crowd that her looks could have gotten her. Luckily for Mimi's desire for companionship, Ino and Hinata had befriended her. Hinata had never really gotten along with most of the other girls in class because she thought that they were too superficial. Also, the Hyuga heiress never liked the idea of mercilessly teasing someone for some dumb reason that many of the in crowd loved to do. Ino had originally been one of the airheads in the in crowd. However, the young Yamanaka's personality had changed a lot ever since she had met Koyuki when the princess was training under her father. In the end, the trio's friendship helped all of them. Mimi got to have friends while Ino and Hinata got a glimpse of what being a kunoichi was all about. True, Mimi only knew about the true genin test, but that information really helped the younger girls to become even more serious about their training. So while all three became more isolated from the rest of the girls in the class, they also became more and more like true kunoichis. As the girls were eating lunch, Naruto hopped onto the fence and said with his cheerful smile, "Hello there, you three." Even though Team 10 had been disbanded and he was the only active ninja besides Ebisu, Naruto still looked in on Mimi. At first, Naruto had done it out of a sense of guilt because he had been unable to help Mimi protect herself during the test. However, he now dropped in on Mimi because he considered the girl to be a friend. Mimi smiled as she looked up and said, "Hi there, Naruto. So I take it that you're back from another hunt." Naruto immediately gave a single confident head nod to answer her question. She then said with big bright eyes, "So can you tell us about your mission, Naruto?" To the trio's disappointment, Naruto quickly shook his head, causing the girls to sigh. Quickly recovering, Mimi started to pout and said, "Then why are you here now during school, Naruto?" Naruto figured that he had played with the girls enough and decided to tell them why he was bothering them while they were in school. He did hang out with the girls, but it was usually school was over for the day. In a very calm and carefree manner, the young hunter said, "I just wanted to remind you three that Koki wants you three to come over today so she can give you some more pointers." This announcement immediately caused the girls to cheer. Koyuki might only be 3 years older than the girls, but the girls had a big case of hero worship for the Snow Princess. In Konoha there were 3 kunoichi besides Tsunade who were held in great esteem for their abilities as ninjas. The most infamous of this trio was Anko Mitarashi, who was both respected and feared for what she had learned under Orochimaru. Next in the group was Kurenai Yuhi, one of the best genjutsu users that could be found. Even Naruto, with his bloodline helping his genjutsus, considered Kurenai to be his superior. Finally, the youngest and most recent member of this trio was Koyuki Kazuhana. Unlike Anko or Kurenai, Koyuki's major claim to fame was her inventiveness and creativity. While Naruto had been generous and had given Koyuki free access to the Namikaze library, the princess had created almost all of the jutsus she usually used. Of all the jutsus that Koyuki had created, none was better known than her chakra whip jutsu. Thanks to that jutsu, she had once killed over 40 bandits who were threatening a client in 10 seconds. It was Hinata who spoke up and said, "Thank you for telling us this, Naruto. If you meet up with Koyuki, will you please tell her that we will show up?" Hinata respected and admired Koyuki more than Ino or Mimi did, so she was always extremely grateful of the lessons Koyuki would give the girls. To Hinata, Koyuki was a model of how a kunoichi of noble station was supposed to act. The Hyuga heiress's dream was eventually mimic a portion of the princess's calmness, pose, and skill. With his message delivered, Naruto waved at the girls and said, "Well, see you later." He then cast a genjutsu to make himself disappear from their sight. None of the girls were the least bit surprised at Naruto's vanishing act. Naruto did it every time he talked to them when they were at school, and they had come to accept it as part of the hunter's little routine. That little tradition had started because one time when Naruto was talking with the girls, someone else had noticed him, and the young Namikaze had gotten swamped with fans. Ever since that day, Naruto would bolt from the school grounds as soon as he was spotted or as soon as he finished saying what he had come to say. Koyuki opened her apartment door after coming home from training with the girl trio and immediately smelled cooking oil and shrimp. Figuring that anyone meaning to harm her wouldn't bother to cook dinner, Koyuki didn't get into an offensive posture. However, Koyuki did want to know who was in her apartment, and while she had her suspicions, she wanted to know for sure. Since she was too tired to sense who was over, the princess called out, "Who's there?" Almost immediately, Koyuki heard Naruto's voice coming from the kitchen saying, "Hi there, Koyuki. Hope I didn't startle you. I was just trying to make shrimp fried rice for dinner as a surprise. Sadly, I'm only half done." The sheepishness in Naruto's voice as he mentioned that he wasn't finished making dinner just put a smile on Koyuki's face. She then called out, "Don't worry about it, Naruto. Just give me a moment to wash up a bit, and I'll help you finish making dinner. At least once a week when both of them were in the village, she or Naruto would try and make dinner for the other. Interestingly enough, neither one of them had been able to finish making dinner before the other arrived, so the other would naturally pitch in and help finish making dinner. Once she had washed her hands and put on an apron, Koyuki joined Naruto in the kitchen. When Koyuki entered the kitchen, she quickly looked around to see what Naruto had accomplished so far. After assessing everything in the kitchen, the princess started to help Naruto out. Thanks to the number of times the two of them had cooked together, Koyuki was able to seamlessly and wordlessly start to help Naruto out. For the next 15 minutes, the two of them worked in silence to make dinner. When dinner was almost ready, Koyuki left the kitchen so she could set the dining table. She had just finished setting the table as Naruto walked in carrying dinner. The two of them then sat down, said their thanks, and started to eat. At first they were too busy eating to talk, but once their initial hunger pains had stopped, they started having a conversation. Naturally, the conversation was on relatively light subjects, and avoided the darker aspects of their jobs. During dinner, Koyuki had been observing Naruto, and was carefully assessing his reactions to what she did. Part of Koyuki was ashamed that she treated her attempts to shift Naruto's love of her from a sibling one to that of a lover's like a mission at times. However, she was able to console herself with the fact that all people in love could be like that at times, and the fact that wasn't changing herself or Naruto in her attempts. If Naruto fell for her, it was because he had naturally fallen in love with her. Luckily, in Koyuki's mind, her efforts had started to pay off. Naruto almost certainly hadn't consciously realized it, but he had started to show all the signs of a person in love. After carefully considering what she had observed tonight, and during the past week or so, Koyuki realized that Naruto was at the point where he needed to realize what he felt towards her. Since Naruto didn't have any friends who would point it out to him, and it would probably take Naruto months or years to realize what he felt on his own, Koyuki knew she would have to confront Naruto about their mutual feelings. The idea of getting Naruto to realize what he felt made Koyuki very nervous because she wasn't sure how she should proceed. Sadly for the princess, she couldn't think of anyone she could go to for useful advice on this matter. Enko would probably suggest that she jump Naruto when they're alone in the onsen. Kurenai would naturally suggest that she wait until Naruto made the first move. Mrs. Yamanaka would just offer confusing and conflicting advice before blabbing everything to the older woman's friends. Naturally, Koyuki had problems with all of the advice that she figured her closest female friends would give. Koyuki didn't mind Naruto seeing her nude, but the idea of immediately jumping to that stage in a relationship was just too much for the princess. She was also trying to move her and Naruto's relationship beyond friendship before the 6th Hokage's reign. Also, she wanted Naruto to find out how she felt, not hear some wild distorted tale thanks to the grapevine. Finally, as Naruto was getting up to leave for the evening, Koyuki made up her mind. The best idea that she could think of was to firmly show Naruto just how she felt, leaving no wiggle room for creative interpretation. While Naruto was walking past her to get to the door, he turned his head to face her, and that was when she struck. Koyuki practically leapt out of her chair, wrapped her arms around Naruto's neck, and firmly kissed Naruto on the lips. Due to Koyuki's mass and the energy she used to throw herself at Naruto, the blonde-haired recipient of her affections was forced to take a step backwards. Part of the reason why Naruto had to take that step instead of using his chakra to reinforce his body was because he was completely surprised by the princess's actions. After Naruto's initial surprise wore off, he started to return the kiss. Koyuki then ended the kiss to say, "You're mine, Naruto, and I'm not letting you go." At first, Naruto was completely baffled by Koyuki's proclamation that he was hers. Luckily for the mood, the boy's brain cells started firing and connected the dots before his mouth could get started rambling. While Naruto was at a loss at what he should say to Koyuki, his heart knew exactly what he should do. He leaned closer to the princess and softly returned her kiss. Azusa sat at his desk in the Hunter Corps building and was staring at Naruto's file. Currently, Azusa was in the middle of his bi-yearly examination of all the ninjas under his command. Ever since the young Namikes had joined the Corps 6 months ago, the boy had been on 14 missions. On 6 of those missions, Naruto's target had been D rank, while the other 8 had been E rank. Overall, it was a very impressive record for such a new ninja to have. This record was impressive enough that Azusa seriously considered promoting Naruto to Chunin. Most civilians thought that ninjas could only be promoted at Chunin via the Chunin exams or to Jonin via the Jonin tests, but this was an overly simplified view of the promotion process. The heads of the Hunter Corps, the Town Guard, and the Intelligence Division had the power to promote their subordinates as long as a set amount of requirements were met. Also, there are other options for promotion that required someone to have completed at least part of the Chunin exams and Jonin exams. If Konoha depended solely on the Chunin exams to promote ninjas, there wouldn't be enough Chunins and Jonins to keep the ninjas organized. Now Naruto did have all the requirements for promotion, but Azusa wasn't sure if he should promote the boy. Unlike that moron Marekio Akimichi in the town guard who would automatically promote someone if they passed the bare minimum requirements, Azusa took promotions very seriously. Considering the fact that a single mistake on his part could result in one of his hunters being seriously maimed or killed, Azusa felt that his stringent standards were justified. There was nothing in the world that the headhunter hated more than having to tell people that their loved ones were dead. Azusa always delivered those messages personally because he felt he owed it to his hunters that died because of his mistakes. After thoroughly considering everything, Azusa decided against promoting Naruto this review period. It wasn't because of anything that the boy had or hadn't done that Azusa had denied the promotion. He just wanted to make sure that Naruto had more experience before letting the boy loose on higher ranked targets. Sure, the young Namikaze was qualified to handle a C-ranked target right now. However, Azusa wanted to make sure that the boy could handle things if the target was stronger than Intel had suggested or had been preparing for a hunter. It only took a single mistake for a hunter to end up dead, and Azusa wanted to ensure that all of his hunters could handle any problems that might come their way. Naruto was in the main dojo of the Hunter Corps practicing his taijutsu on one of the wooden dummies. Even though Naruto preferred to take his enemies out by using genjutsu to confuse or immobilize them so he could deliver a killing blow, he still kept up with the other ninja arts. Normally when Naruto practiced his taijutsu he would be completely calm, but today his face was stormy as he pounded the dummy. Everyone had received their review reposts today, and Naruto was angry that he hadn't gotten a promotion. It just didn't make any sense. Why hadn't he been promoted? Naruto didn't feel that he deserved a promotion because of who he was, like some more foolish people might think. Rather, he felt that his record with the Hunter Corps had earned him that promotion. Thanks to Yugogo Naruto all of the rules and regulations of the Hunter Corps, so he knew that he had surpassed all of the requirements for promotion. Why hadn't he been promoted? As Naruto was delivering a neck chop on the dummy, he heard the sound of the dojo door opening. He quickly turned his head towards the door and saw Yugogo walk into the room. There was a moment of silence, and then Yugogo calmly said, "I figured you'd be here, Naruto." This comment completely confused Naruto and resulted in him making a funny face that almost caused Yugogo to start laughing. With a bit of mirth in her voice, Yugogo continued on. "No offense, Naruto, but you're easy for anyone who knows you to read. Even though you never said anything, it was quite obvious that you were hoping for a promotion." Naruto looked directly into Yugogo's eyes and said, "Why? Why didn't I receive that promotion? I passed all of the requirements, I finished all of my missions quickly, and those were real missions. I got along with the other hunters and I never picked a fight or used my name to get anything. What did I do wrong that caused me to not get that promotion? Please tell me, Yugogo. At the very least I deserve to know what I did wrong so that I can correct it." Yugogo calmly looked at Naruto and said, "You didn't do anything wrong, Naruto. It's just that my uncle feels that you aren't ready to become a Chunin. According to him, you're still too green to become a Chunin and go after higher level missing ninjas. Even though you passed the bureaucratic minimums to become a Chunin, you aren't necessarily ready to become a Chunin." Since Naruto was obviously still confused, Yugogo decided to make her point. She unzipped her jacket and threw it to the side so that she was wearing a black t-shirt that exposed her belly. Yugogo then got into a fighting stance and said, "Fight me, Naruto. Jutsus and your bloodlines are off limits for this fight." Naruto was still confused about why Yugogo wanted to fight him here and now, but he didn't mind the chance to let off some steam. Naruto and Yugogo taijutsu styles were speed-based styles relying on quick, precise blows to defeat someone and avoiding an opponent's attack for defense. However, there were some major differences in their styles. Yugogo's taijutsu was an aerial-based combat style, whereas Naruto's taijutsu was ground-based. Thus, when Naruto opened up with a basic jab, Yugogo leapt in the air and sent a kick and a punch of her own. Naturally, Naruto was expecting this from his teacher, and he proceeded to swerve out of the way. With their opening warm-up out of the way, Naruto and Yugogo kicked up the tempo of their fight. If someone had been watching the spar, that person would have seen the two ninjas circling around each other, exchanging and dodging each other's attacks. Overall, the fight between the two was pretty even. This constant weaving and attacking continued on for over 10 minutes without either combatant getting the upper hand. Even though Yugogo had more combat experience than Naruto, it was Naruto who had more skill in taijutsu. This balance in the fight was suddenly destroyed when Yugogo summoned two small daggers and slashed Naruto's arms. The two cuts that Yugogo created weren't deep, but they were very long. Naruto immediately started to heal his arms and he angrily called out, "What's with the knives, Yugogo? This a taijutsu match?" Yugogo immediately retorted, "Who said this was a taijutsu match? You just assumed that it was when I said that jutsus weren't allowed." The purple-haired instructor sheathed her knives and then stood with her arms folded across her chest. She then said, "This is exactly why you weren't promoted, Naruto. You still assume too much because you don't have enough experience. If you made an assumption like this on an enemy because of initial observations or data that you've been handed, and it turns out to be a mistake, you could end up dead. Remember, missing ninjas write their bingo book entries with hunter's blood." As Naruto thought about what his teacher had said, Yugogo walked over and grabbed her jacket. With her jacket tucked under her arm, Yugogo turned to Naruto and said, "Don't worry, Naruto. I know that you can become a chunin next time the reviews come around if you just keep working for it. Also, I'm planning on requesting to take you on a C rank hunt once in a while in the future. Since I'm rated for solo A rank hunts, it will be a since to get permission to take you on a training hunt of that rank. That should give you the experience you need to advance." With that said, Yugogo turned around and walked out of the dojo. Tadewaki Otogi had once been the rising star of Kumo, and all in the village had respected him for his mighty kenjutsu. However, his great fame had generated cowardly enemies who poisoned the noble lighting daimyo into removing the glorious raikage and replacing the noble leader with one of their cowardly number. These vipers had then proceeded to remove all like himself who realized what those people had been plotting. Oh, how the heavens wept that a noble ninja such as he was exiled from his home, and that he had to protect himself from other ninjas like he was a criminal. Forced to flee from lighting country, Tadewaki had ended up in fire country. The very name of the country showed that it could only be connected to the pits of hell, and that its people were demons wearing human flesh. These people might be demons, but at least they recognized his greatness. Why else would they send over 24 of their most elite ninjas to try and fight him if they didn't recognize who he was? Tadewaki turned to look at a squad of the enemy ninjas and called out, "Despair, for I am Tadewaki Otogi of Kumo." Naruto and Yugogo were up in a tree about 50 meters away from where Tadewaki was standing. With a large sweat drop behind his head, Naruto turned to face Yugogo and said, "Please tell me that this is some sort of clerical mistake. How could a person as crazy as him ever become a ninja? I mean, I'm only putting a third of my ability into this genjutsu to set this guy up from a stronger multi-layer genjutsu, and the fool is buying it completely. Not even my old classmate Lee would be as completely caught by this particular genjutsu as this fool, and Lee was the worst in the class at detecting genjutsu." Yugogo nervously chuckled and said, "I have to agree with you, Naruto, that this Otogi is rather pathetic when it comes to genjutsu." However, Yugogo paused for a moment as Tadewaki unleashed a ranged kenjutsu attack that destroyed a large nearby tree. Just because he is poor in one area of the ninja arts does mean he is unfit to be a ninja. You just happen to be very skilled in this person's weakness, and you should take this to heart. After all, somewhere out there is a ninja whose abilities make that person the perfect person to kill you. The two hunters returned their attention to their target, and watched as the man launched attack after attack at phantom enemies. With Naruto subtly manipulating the genjutsu he had cast on Tadewaki, none of the attacks came remotely near where the two hunters were standing. After a few minutes of attacking phantoms, Tadewaki collapsed onto the forest floor unconscious. When Naruto saw his prey collapse, he jumped down, sprinted over to the missing ninja, and quickly drained the man to death. Once the man was dead, Naruto removed the head, and used a low-level fire jutsu to destroy the body. According to the mission report, Tadewaki didn't have anything that intelligence wanted to investigate, so the man's body was to be destroyed. After sealing the head in a scroll, Naruto turned around and said, "So Yugogo, what do you think? Is there anything that I should have done differently?" Yugogo approached Naruto, looked at the smoldering body of Tadewaki, and then looked back at Naruto. With a calm and critical tone she said, "Overall your performance was good, Naruto. However, there is room for improvement. For instance, a better tactic would have been to increase the power of the genjutsu you had on the enemy, and immobile him that way instead of having him tire himself out. What you did here caused a lot of collateral damage that could be very costly in money and lives if this wasn't a deserted section of forest. Also, you should have held that fire jutsu for 3 more seconds to ensure a better burn of the corpse. If the ground was wetter, critical parts of the corpse could have survived with how you used that jutsu." Naruto bowed his head slightly and said, "I understand, Yugogo. On my next mission I will try to correct these mistakes." Yugogo just smiled and said, "I know you will, Naruto. You always do what you say you're going to do. Now, let's get back to Konoha so we can catch this sucker in. For your first C-rank hunt you did great. I didn't even have to step in and help you at all. Keep this up and you'll be hunting these guys on your own in no time." With that said, Yugogo and Naruto headed back to Konoha. Up in one of the rooftop onsens, Koki and Naruto were relaxing as was their custom. Neither of them had ever thought about altering that habit, and what point would that habit serve? As Koki had once told one of her friends who had asked, Naruto already knew what she looked like, so why should she hide her body now that they were dating? While a few of her friends had been scandalized by her statement, most of them understood that she looked at some things from a different point of view. Besides, Koki thought she might be giving Naruto a show, but she was also getting one in return. Koki stopped her musings to turn and look at Naruto. She then said, "Oh Naruto, I heard something interesting the other day from Anko." When the princess saw that she had Naruto's attention, she continued on talking. "It seems that you're starting to cause a bit of a buzz in the other villages' intelligence sectors and among the missing ninjas. You're no big name hunter yet, but it seems your style is starting to pick up some attention. A sizable minority of lower-level missing ninjas who are weak against genjutsu are getting worried that the Wraith might start coming after them." Naruto was rather surprised to hear that he already had a reputation and said, "They're calling me the Wraith? Why on earth have they given me a title? I don't even have the right to decorate my mask yet. Hell, Yugogo doesn't have a title yet among the other countries and she's got 10 times the kills as I do and most of her kills are higher levels than mine. Please don't tell me that someone out there is creating campfire stories about me." The princess giggled a little and then replied, "Naruto, your reputation isn't the result of someone tall tales. You're building up a rep because you always get your target, and the fact that you hunt in a very different style than most other hunters. Most of the other villages and missing ninjas figure you're a new chunin who's joined the hunter corps. What really is making people nervous is that fact that your skills are increasing at a very fast rate. Besides, you should be grateful for the title you've gotten. It's a lot better than SNM Princess." Koyuki had received a few titles over the years for her skills, but SNM Princess seemed to be the preferred title of choice for those outside the village, just because she used the chakra whip as her main offensive weapon. Knowing that the title was a sore spot to Koyuki, Naruto walked over and started to massage Koyuki's back. According to his girlfriend, Naruto was allowed to touch every inch of her body except for 2 areas, and he respected those boundaries. As the young man was giving his girlfriend a deep muscle massage, he said, "The academy finishes up the school year next month. From what I hear from the grapevine, you're going to be one of the genin instructors for this year's class. Is there any truth to this rumor, dear?" While thoroughly enjoying the massage, Koyuki replied, "I'm seriously considering it, love. However, I haven't fully decided one way or the other. Deadline for instructor applications is next Friday, so I still have some time before I have to decide. Even so, I'll most likely have a 1 in 4 chance of having my application chosen, and then a 1 in 3 chance getting a team that will pull their heads together and qualify." In a supportive tone, Naruto said, "I'm perfectly fine with and will support you no matter what you choose to do." There was a pleasant pause for a moment before Naruto changed the subject again. "There's a really high chance that I'll get a promotion next month when the reviews are done this time. If I do get promoted, I'll have proven that I'm strong enough to handle living at the Namake's clan compound. What I'm trying to say is that if I get to move into my clan house, would you like to move in as well, Koyuki?" Koyuki turned around and used her grip so that Naruto was sitting in her lap. She then raised 2 fingers and softly put them on Naruto's lips before saying, "We have a special bond, Naruto. When I move out of my apartment, it will be so I can go to the home where our future children will be raised. I may move in with you on the same day that you go to live there, or I may wait a few years, I don't know. However, what I do know is that on that day you will have this." As soon as Koyuki said that, she gently grabbed one of Naruto's hands and carefully placed it between her legs. Then, before Naruto could get over his shock at what Koyuki had just done, she pulled his hand away and gently slid him off of her lap. She then stood up, stretched her arms, got out of the onsen, and then started to dry herself. Once Koyuki had her bathrobe on, she turned around and said, "Good night, Naruto, I'm going to bed. I hope you have pleasant dreams." Naruto looked in the mirror and desperately tried not to play with his collar. There was just something about formal kimonos that really bothered him. It wasn't the fabric. His kimono, like any clan head, was made out of silk. Maybe it was just Naruto's dislike of formal functions that made wearing the outfit so difficult. Sarutobi had called for a full assembly of the clan council to meet with the daimyo of Vegetable Country. As head of the Namake's clan, even though Naruto wouldn't actually have control of the Namake's clan assets for another 8 months or until he made Chunin, Naruto had to go to the meeting. Koyuki walked in just as Naruto was about to adjust his collar again and said, "Stop that, Naruto. Leave your collar alone and think of something else." With a slightly embarrassed grin on his face, Naruto turned to his girlfriend and replied, "But Koyuki, I hate having to wear this outfit. Why can't we just wear our standard outfits? Konoha is a ninja village after all. Would it really be so bad if we just looked the part?" Koyuki's mirth was carried by her voice as she said, "Isn't one of the main tenets of the ninja code subterfuge?" She then smiled as Naruto sighed and continued on. "Besides, Naruto, think of the benefits. You get to have me sitting next to you at the dinner. None of the other clan heads will get to show off a genuine princess hanging off their arms." To emphasize her point, Koyuki did a little twirl to let Naruto appreciate how she looked in her kimono. Like any man in love, the sight of Koyuki in that lovely dress made Naruto forget all of his complaints about having to wear his outfit. Naruto just looked at Koyuki silently for a few minutes and then he kissed her. For a few moments, the duo just stood where they were enjoying the kiss. Then Naruto pulled back and said, "Well then, let's get this over with." Naruto offered his arm to Koyuki and the duo left Naruto's apartment. Normally, the sight of Naruto or Koyuki in formal attire would cause a big scene in Konoha. Both of them were known to prefer loose-fitting, comfortable clothing. It actually helped the duo deal with the regular villagers because it made them seem a lot closer to the villagers than the other important upper-class members of the village. However, pretty much everyone in Konoha knew about the arrival of the vegetable daimyo, and that the duo was part of the welcoming committee. At first glance, it might seem strange that Konoha was so excited about Vegetable Country's daimyo coming to visit, Sure, a visit from a daimyo was important, but vegetable country was rather small. Many of the fire daimyo's retainers had fiefs bigger than vegetable country. However, vegetable country's importance lay in the fact that it was one of the larger countries in the Stormbreaker Expanse. The Stormbreaker Expanse was a series of small countries that lay between Fire Country and Lighting Country and part of the Expanse, the critical isthmus of Raiden. Fire Country and Lighting Country were in constant competition with each other over who could get the most countries in the Expanse into their political orbits. Naruto and Koyuki weren't the first people of the welcoming committee to assemble at the gate, but they weren't the last people to arrive. There was a definite order among the assembly, even though the members of the crowd were busy talking to each other. Sarutobi was standing up front and in the center, occupying the most important spot. Hayashi Hyuga, who was the first speaker of the High Council, occupied the next most important spot at Sarutobi's right. Naruto got the third most important spot at Sarutobi's left side because he was both a clan head and Minato's son. Koyuki was standing at Naruto's right side. While there wasn't a Kazuhana clan on the council, Koyuki was included because she was Naruto's guest and the fact that she was a princess. The whole assembly quieted down when everyone saw the approach of the daimyo's caravan. Vegetables daimyo was riding in a decorated litter that had gold trim. Behind that litter was a second, slightly less decorated litter. Once the two litters were carried inside Konoha, they were set down in front of the assembly. Then one of the servants opened the litter while another announced, presenting, the noble daimyo of vegetable country. There was a respectful nod from the delegation as the daimyo emerged from his litter. After the daimyo was out, the servant announced, presenting, the noble heir of vegetable country. After the princess had stepped out of her litter, Sarutobi approached the vegetable daimyo and said, I am the Sandaime Hokage. On behalf of Konoha, I welcome you to our village, Lord Toma of vegetable country. Lord Toma smiled at Sarutobi and said, I thank you for your hospitality, Sarutobi. Let me present my daughter, Princess Haruna. After Sarutobi gave the customary pleasantries about the princess, Lord Toma said, would it be too much trouble if you could find someone to keep an eye on my daughter? I would dearly like it if she could have some friendly company while we talk business later at dinner. Sarutobi nodded his head and replied, Don't worry, Lord Toma. Your daughter will be taken care of. The Hokage immediately motioned to Naruto and said, Naruto Namikaze and his companion Princess Koyuki will keep an eye on your daughter for you. I am hard-pressed to find two other people I would trust with my life more than these two. Rest assured your daughter will be in good hands for the duration of your visit. Neither Naruto nor Koyuki had expected to be volunteered for guard duty. However, they could understand why Sarutobi had suggested them. They were the highest ranking in the nobility pecking order of the ninjas around Haruna's age. That meant that they were the best people to handle looking after the princess without potentially offending her if she was one of those really snobby princesses. Naruto and Koyuki briefly glanced at each other, and they knew that dinner was going to be interesting. In the dining hall, there were two raised platforms. The higher one contained a long rectangular table where Sarutobi, Lord Toma, and most of the clan heads sat. The lower platform had several smaller tables where the clan heirs and the heads of the various departments sat. Below this platform were a dozen large tables where the other guests sat at. Naruto, Koyuki, and Haruna all sat at a single table on the clan heir level with no one else at the table. Haruna looked at her two dining companions with a bit of awe. It was well known among the nobles in vegetable country that Naruto had killed a high-ranking Kumo ninja when he was only 6 years old. Any news that affected Fire Country or Lighting Country was given particular attention in the Expanse, and the Namikaze incident definitely affected Lighting Country. As for Koyuki, well, every princess and noblewoman knew about her. In Haruna's mind, Koyuki and Naruto were practically characters out of a fantasy novel. Nevertheless, Haruna didn't let Naruto and Koyuki catch on to her awe of them. Most people would automatically assume that a ninja would be able to tell when someone was masking their thoughts. It was part of the mystic that many ninjas had subtly cultivated over the decades. However, Haruna was a princess, and had been taught how to hide her emotions so that they didn't hurt her during negotiations. In a pleasant manner she said, So Namikaze, what have you been up to? From what I heard you were attending Konoha's Ninja Academy, and then you seemed to have disappeared. Naruto gave Haruna a friendly smile and replied, I didn't know that I was considered worth paying attention to. But for your information, I graduated from the academy last year. There was some trouble in my genin team because of one of my teammates, shortly after the team was formed. Afterwards, there's some question about what to do with me since my team was disbanded by our instructor. The Hunter Corp invited me to join them and I accepted. This answer caused Haruna to raise an eyebrow. She could tell that this showed Naruto's potential as a ninja, even if she didn't know the particulars about how Konoha was run. Haruna then decided to bring the conversation more into her field of expertise. With a subtle glance to the head table, Haruna asked, Naruto, Koyuki, can either of you tell me about Konoha's High Council? I know it acts as a check on your Hokage in certain civilian aspects. However, I'm curious about what makes it tick. Koike decided to field this one knowing how much Naruto disliked talking about politics. Well, Haruna, Konoha's council has several factions in it. Each faction is known by the plant that the faction leader has chosen as an emblem. Hayashi Hyuga's Lily faction, which tends to be very traditional, is currently in charge of the council. The next major factor is the Merchant's Clover faction, which focuses on trading interests. The Rosemary faction is interested in finding new applications for ninjas outside of the traditional warrior and assassin roles. Finally, there is the Hemlock faction that wants Konoha to become more militant. Haruna nodded her head and thanked Koike for telling her this. She then asked, "So what's it like being a kunoichi, Koike? I can't tell you how big of a storm you've created among the noble women at the courts I've been to." At that point, Naruto zoned out of Koike and Haruna's conversation. Like any guy, Naruto couldn't make heads or tails of girl talk and figured it was better to just smile and nod. Naruto was content to just eat his steak and not have to deal with the political wheeling and dealing going on above him. That was a luxury that Naruto wouldn't have in 8 months, or 10 days if he was promoted. While Naruto understood the importance of his clan's spot on the council and the need to keep on top of things there, he didn't really like it. Koike really enjoyed her conversation with Haruna. It wasn't often that she could just be one of the girls with someone, since the group of women who accepted her as is was very small. Mostly the conversation was just between her and Haruna. At times, they were able to get Naruto to contribute, but for the most part it was just them. Slowly, Koike began to admire Haruna. Unlike other princesses and noble women, Haruna had a good, firm head on her shoulder. About the time the third course was served, the princess's conversation turned to battle tactics. Naruto joined in wholeheartedly in this conversation. Haruna was continuously impressed by the unorthodox, but likely effective plans Naruto was able to come up with after considering a situation for a few seconds. Naruto respected Haruna's understanding of battle tactics, but he didn't like her opinion on acceptable losses. To show his point, Naruto said, "It does not matter if someone is in charge of 400, or 4,000 people. The moment someone has command, that person receives a special trust from their subordinates. The subordinates believe in their commander, and trust the commander to protect them and bring victory. One of the main responsibilities of any commander is to try and minimize casualties among his or her troops whenever possible. It is far better for someone to lose a battle with one's army intact than to win a battle and lose one's army. Land, money, and homes can all be rebuilt or regained in the future. The loss of good men and women, that is something that can never be replaced." Haruna blushed slightly and replied, "I understand your point, Naruto. My instructors never put it in that perspective before. When I had to study military tactics, the focus was always on winning the battle. You have given me much to think about." Naruto smiled and said, "When one deals with death, these things happen. Many people, especially when dealing with large numbers, start to see the soldiers as simple statistics. It's a coping method that many people have in order to deal with the fact that every soldier is someone's father, son, brother, or best friend. A leader has to work hard to avoid falling into that trap. Now that you're aware of the trap, I'm sure you will avoid it in the future." The next day, Naruto found himself sitting in the council chambers with all the other clan heads. Since Naruto was a genin, he was allowed to speak in the council. However, he wasn't able to vote on any council decisions. Normally Naruto would blow council meetings off, but Sarutobi had called for a full clan council. There was no way that Naruto was going to disappoint Sarutobi, even if it meant giving up a perfectly good morning to listen to a bunch of politicians. Konoha's council room was set up like an auditorium. The Hokage and his advisors sat at a table on a raised platform facing everyone. Then there were the rows where the clan heads and their aides sat. After that there was an open space where the ordinary citizens could stand and watch the proceedings. Sarutobi looked up at the packed council chamber, and he said, "Thank you all for coming here. I know many of you are taking precious time away from training or missions, so I'll be brief. As a gesture of goodwill towards Fire Country, Princess Haruna is going to be an honored guest here in Konoha for quite some time. This meeting is to find the princess proper lodging." Instantly the heads started buzzing as they started squabbling over who would have the honor of looking after Princess Haruna. Personally, Naruto couldn't help feeling ashamed of many of the clan heads. The princess was collateral to ensure that Lord Toma stayed loyal to Fire Country. There was a certain honor in looking after honor prisoners, but this immature arguing completely negated such honor. Finally Naruto had enough and he shouted out, "Act your age, people. We're supposed to be here to find a comfortable place for Princess Haruna to stay until the Fire Daimyo feels he can trust Lord Toma, or Lord Toma kicks the bucket and Princess Haruna has to take up her father's position. No offense meant to the Inuzuka clan, but you're all acting like a bunch of hungry dogs fighting over a bone." Hayashi swiveled around to look at Naruto. The room was deathly quiet and everyone heard Hayashi speak to Naruto. "And just what would you suggest we do, Naruto?" Everyone knew that the familiarity Hayashi addressed Naruto by wasn't out of friendship. Rather, It was Hayashi's way of telling Naruto that he was still too young to be butting his nose into such matters. Up in the stands, Koyuki and Haruna glanced at each other before focusing on Naruto. Not letting Hayashi's remarks get to him, Naruto quickly replied, "It seems to me that the best thing we can do is to place the princess in one of the better hotels for 2 weeks. During that period, we let her get to know the various clans represented here, and at the end of 2 weeks we let her choose who she stays with. This way, we don't offend her father, and we have a chance to earn her gratitude. Even a minor daimyo can withhold or contribute significant funds to the village in missions. If this plan of mine is adopted, I request that my clan assets be used to pay for her hotel room." Many of the clan heads started nodding their heads in approval of Naruto's plan. It was a simple plan that would save a lot of arguing. The fact that Naruto had brought up the missions and had been willing to finance the princess's stay earned him even more respect. One didn't find too many fully baked ideas in the council room. Chusa Akimichi stood up and said, "I say we adopt the young Namikaze's plan." A low thunder filled the room from the rhythmic pounding of fists on desks, the traditional symbol of support of an idea. The thunderous support of Naruto's idea did not sit well with Hayashi, who saw it as a direct threat to his political position. In an attempt to regain control of the council, Hayashi said, "I would like to point out to this noble council that the results for promotion will be published in 9 days. May I also point out that young Namikaze's name is one of the ninjas being considered for promotion. One doesn't need to look underneath to see what's going on." Everyone was shocked by Naruto's next move. Instead of jumping up and renouncing those allegations, Naruto leaned back and lazily put his feet on his desk. He then pulled out a book on genjutsu that he had partially read and started to read it. One of the clan heads got over his shock and asked, "A young Namikaze? What are you doing?" Naruto put down his book and cheerfully said, "It's simple, sir. I'm waiting for Hayashi to grow up and start acting like the esteemed clan head that he usually is, instead of like a little kid who tries to ruin a playground game because it's not the one he wanted to play." Everyone in the council room held their breath as Naruto casually continued on. "Hayashi wants the clan heads to squabble over which clan gets the honor of watching Princess Haruna because he knows that the Hyuga clan is the best shot at gaining the honor at the end of the squabble. However, the chances of the Hyuga clan gaining this honor are severely diminished if we let the princess choose who she stays with. While the Hyuga clan is an honorable clan, they are not known for their hospitality. As Hayashi pointed out, I currently cannot let the princess stay with the Namikaze clan because I currently am not allowed the full rights and responsibilities of being a clan head. The fact that could become a chunin, and thus a full clan head, is an inconsequential fact. Even if I made a favorable impression on the princess last night at the banquet, I seriously doubt that Princess Haruna would be willing to wait 9 days in a hotel room on the tentative possibility that she could stay at the Namikaze estate." Many more of the clan heads pounded their desks in approval at the end of Naruto's little speech than had thundered for Chusa's call for a vote. Hayashi, and everyone watching the council meeting, knew then and there that Naruto's plan was going to be adopted by the council. As much as Hayashi detested Naruto's scathing remarks, he couldn't help respecting Naruto. The boy had definitely inherited his father's ability to handle the council. The Namikaze estate was a rather cozy place compared to other noble clan estates. Instead of being made of a patchwork of houses, the estate only had a single large 3-story rectangular home surrounded by several training fields. Minato had personally designed the house with several apartments inside so that in the future the entire Namikaze clan could live together. It had been Minato's hope to keep his descendants together with a strong sense of family rather than a sense of loyalty to a clan. Naruto had toured the place several times before. After all, the estate was his and he needed to know everything about the house. However, the estate seemed different this time. Usually, Naruto felt a sense of wonder whenever he visited the estate. Currently, he felt excited and nervous all at the same time. Why did the house stir such different emotions in Naruto now that he had become a chunin than it did yesterday? It just didn't make any sense. The estate was in the exact same condition as it was yesterday. He hadn't eaten any overly spicy foods in the past 24 hours. The weather was even pretty much the same. Slowly, Naruto realized why he felt so different about the house. Previously, he had only acknowledged intellectually that he would one day control this estate. It had never really sunk in until now that this was where he'd live. This place and moving into it signified more than just getting a better place to stay than the apartment he had lived in for the past decade. By moving in, Naruto was in a sense taking his final steps into adulthood. That underlying fact was what summoned these feelings of nervousness inside Naruto. Once Naruto realized this, he took a deep breath and firmly walked into the house. There was no way that he was going to let nervousness over growing up get in his way. The inside of the house was just as well kept as the outside was thanks to D-rank missions for some of the more annoying genin. According to Naruto's nose, those genin had also restocked the refrigerator like he had asked on the mission request. Good thing the new teams wouldn't start taking missions for a few more days. The chance of Koiki's team, if they passed her test, getting one of these cleaning missions was just too embarrassing. Naruto made a quick detour at the kitchen to grab a soda and then he headed up to the master bedroom. Once Naruto got there, he took out a small scroll from his pocket and unsealed his clothes. He spent the next few minutes putting his clothes and his various mementos in their new spots. After that was taken care of, Naruto laid on his king-size bed and sighed. Now that everything was in place, the house didn't seem so imposing or awe-inspiring anymore. Which was a good thing, since who would want to live in a place that intimidated them? Just as Naruto was about to close his eyes, the doorbell chime went off. Minato had set up a series of bells in the master bedroom so that each one would go off if someone who wasn't tied to the security seals opened a window or door. Naruto wasn't too worried about whoever was at the door because the bell going off was the front door. Figuring it was the neighbors, Naruto got up and walked to the door. When Naruto opened the front door, he found Koyuki and Haruna standing on his front porch. Koyuki gave Naruto a quick kiss and said, "Hello Naruto. Haruna and I were just walking back from shopping when we passed by. We figured it would be nice to drop in and see how you're coming with moving in." A quick glance to the girls' sides revealed a set of simple sealing scrolls that Naruto knew Koyuki always used when shopping. Naruto politely stepped to the side and said, "Come in. I'll go put on a pot of tea while you two take off your shoes." As soon as Koyuki and Haruna were inside, Naruto left to go make the tea. After the princesses had taken off their shoes, Koyuki led Haruna to the kitchen. Just like he had said, Naruto had a pot of water on to boil and had put a variety of teas down on the table. The girls quickly selected the teas they wanted and Naruto put the rest back in the pantry. Once the tea was made, Naruto inquired, "So Koyuki, do you know who your team is yet?" Koyuki took a sip and then replied, "Yes, I found out this morning. If they don't blow it on the real exam, I'll be the proud Jonin instructor of Hinata Hyuga, Ino Yamanaka, and Mimi Yamano." Haruna blinked her eyes and then said, "I know that I don't know a lot about ninjas, but I've never heard of a team made entirely out of kunoichi before Koyuki." Naruto's surprise at Koyuki's team was also evident in his eyes. There hadn't been an all-kunoichi team at all in Konoha's history. After taking another sip, Koyuki nodded her head and explained, "You're right, Haruna. It is rather odd to have an all-kunoichi team. My team is actually an experiment that the Hokage wants to try. You see, on most genin teams the kunoichis tend to be the weak point. Part of this is because women tend to have smaller chakra reserves than men and a lot of genin training is geared towards using stronger jutsus. The Hokage is hoping that I'll be able to train the girls to be just as effective as ninjas using jutsus and tricks that women are better suited for. My team's primary role will be recon and infiltration." Naruto thought about what Koyuki said and he nodded his head. Then he swiftly replied, "That makes a lot of sense. Kunoichis are able to blend into the civilian population better because their generally better chakra control allows them to mass their chakra to civilian levels. Also, most guards, I'm sad to say, don't pay any attention to small groups of girls walking around, unless they're checking out the girls. Hinata's Byakugan will help with area recon. Of course, she'll have to wear contacts and avoid activating her bloodline when in other villages. The Byakugan is just too distinctive to not be noticed." Koyuki nodded her head and said, "I was planning on telling Hinata that after the team passes my test. With the side training I've given the girls already and Mimi's experience, there's no way they'll fail. One of the reasons why Haruna and I were shopping today was I wanted to get an idea of what kinds of civilian outfits were available that could be modified to hold ninja equipment. The girls are going to need to blend in better, and I figured that it would only be fair that I get them a starting outfit along with a false background to practice." Haruna jumped in at this point and said, "Ino's just going to love the idea, Koyuki." Naruto blinked and asked, "How do you know that Ino would like the idea of dressing in a civilian disguise?" The vegetable princess gave Naruto a small smile and said, "That's right, you haven't heard. I'm staying with the Yamanakas. They were one of the few clans that treated me like I was a friend who needed a place to stay and not as a princess who had to be watched. The Akimikis and the Naras also treated me like I was a friend, but I found the Yamanakas to be more pleasant. Mrs. Yamanaka can be a little annoying with her gossiping, but it reminds me of the gossip that I always heard from my maids." Koyuki grinned and added her 2 cents. "Mrs. Yamanaka can be a much at times. However, she does have a good heart, and is a lot pleasanter than the average Hyuga is any day of the week. How Hinata got to be so sweet with her family I'll never know." The trio continued to chat about all sorts of things for the next hour. Haruna had latched on to Koyuki and Naruto as friends and the loving couple had accepted her friendship. When it was time for Koyuki and Haruna to go, Naruto said, "Thanks for coming, you two." He then kissed Koyuki and continued on, "I wish we could do this again tomorrow, but I have to head out on another hunt. I'll get the info on my hunt tomorrow and hopefully be back in town by the end of the month." Koyuki nodded her head and said, "I understand, Naruto, and be careful. I want you back here in one piece and full working order. Haruna blushed slightly at Koiki's insinuation. It was just so surprising to Haruna that Koiki, who normally acted like a proper lady off-duty, could act like such a flirt around Naruto. The princess duet quickly finished up their goodbyes after that and left Naruto alone for the night. Besides the image of Jun Bakura, which Naruto noted showed Jun wearing an eye patch, there wasn't a whole lot of information on the target. In all honesty, the lack of information made Naruto nervous. Lack of information wasn't so bad for regular ninjas who did patrols, guard duties, or assault missions. However, the Hunter Corps detested and feared a lack of information. About 4 out of 5 Hunter Ninja deaths could be traced to bad information, so everyone in the Corps had good reason to be leery about a lack of information. Naruto gave the scant information another look over, hoping to find any minuscule fact that he might have overlooked. Unfortunately, the only witnesses to Jun Bakura's crimes were civilians who barely knew the difference between a hand sign and kunai. The man's rank was based on what intel could piece together from the various eyewitness accounts and police reports filed about the crimes. After failing to find any overlooked facts, Naruto set about planning how he was going to catch Jun. Not exactly an easy task since Jun apparently didn't have a home base, and it would be rather futile to just randomly wander in the areas of Jun's attacks. Naruto quickly pulled out an atlas and went to the map showing Jun's range of attacks. He then covered the map with a nearly see-through piece of graph paper and marked down each area that Jun had hit. Unfortunately, the attacks were too uniform for Naruto to find any likely areas to search. Naruto wasn't deterred by this, and he immediately started connecting the raid sites. Suddenly a pattern appeared. The path of attacks came near a small town 6 times, but the town itself was never attacked. Immediately, Naruto pulled out a reference on the various cities and towns in Fire Country, and looked up Jun's potential base of operations. According to the reference, that particular town was a rather rough place that was pretty much run by small-time crime lords. The Fire Daimyo let criminals live in that town because it was small and out-of-the-way place. This also made it just the sort of place that a person like Jun Bakura would go to for sanctuary. Iruka walked into his classroom and looked at his students one last time. Hopefully, he'd never see them as an academy student again. It was Iruka's dream to be the first teacher in the academy to get every single one of his students to pass the true genin exam. It probably was a pipe dream, but he could still dream. After giving the class another once-over, Iruka pulled out his list of teams and began to read them off. Team 6 is composed of Hinata Hyuga, Ino Yamanaka, and Mimi Yamano. For Team 7 we have Kiba Inuzuka, Sakura Hirano, and Choji Akimichi. Team 8 has Shino Abirame, Shikimura Nara, and Sai. For the next team we have, and so on as Iruka finished naming off the teams. Immediately there was a great deal of complaining from the guys. As one of them put it, it's totally unfair that the real kunoichis are on a separate team while we get stuck with the pseudo kunoichis. Iruka might have been more sympathetic to the guys if it hadn't been for the headache they were causing. There had always been a little bit of friction between the guys and the girls in the academy. Most who noticed this tension simply considered to be a result of the gender divide that most kids had at that age. Unfortunately, the juvenile battle of the sexes had taken a much more heated direction among this year's class. The cause was a casual comment from Naruto during one of his visits about most of the girls in the class. His exact words were, "What good is eye candy if it's dependent on you for protection and it's supposed to be watching your back?" Ino, Hinata, and Mimi had understood that Naruto was giving them sound advice about how it's more important for a kunoichi to worry about her skills than to worry about her looks. Most of the girls in the class either ignored Naruto's words or twisted them to suit their worldview. However, most of the boys had taken Naruto's words to heart and realized that those words could just as easily apply to them if they didn't train. Needless to say, joint classes had been even more exasperating than in previous years. As soon as the guys calmed down a bit, Iruka said, "Each team is built around a particular purpose. Some, like Team 7 and 8, are general teams meant to fulfill a wide variety of missions. Others, like Team 6, are specialized in 2 or 3 related fields in order to handle situations that a general team can't handle." Naturally, Kiba was about to make a rather rude remark. However, Mimi cut Kiba off by hitting him with a saban needle coated in a mild paralyzing agent. Seeing a chance to get things back on track, and let out his inner prankster at the same time, Iruka calmly said, "Try to be less noticeable next time you're putting a dog to sleep, Mimi. Now then, your teachers will be here after lunch to pick you up. Try not to send any of them into the mental rehab facilities." The class was a lot quieter as they tried to deal with the shock of Mr. Strict, as they affectionately dubbed Iruka, joking. For the most part, the new genin passed the time until their instructors arrived peacefully. There were a few snide remarks here and there by some of the popular girls about Team 6. While the members of Team 6 didn't pay attention to these comments, many of the boys directed their killing intent at the airheads making the remarks. As far as the boys were concerned, the other girls in the class had no right to talk about Team 6 like that. Eventually, the time flew by and the instructors started to arrive. Koiki was the first one to reach the classroom and she calmly said, "Would Team 6 please come with me?" Many of the girls shot jealous glares at Team 6 for landing one of the 3 ladies from Hades as their instructor. There were no vocal complaints from the other girls due to the killing intent from the guys. If it had been Kurenai or Anko, the killing intent wouldn't be there since the boys would have been drooling over them. Koiki was just as attractive as the other 2 members of the ladies, but she was Naruto's girl and slobbering over someone you know is another man's girl just wasn't done. It went against the code. The girls, glad to be able to leave, quickly got up and followed Koiki out of the classroom. Koiki quietly led her team to the library where she figured that they'd have some peace and quiet. As soon as they were in the library, Koiki motioned for her students to sit down. She then gave the girls a soft smile and said, "First off, I'd like to say that I'm impressed with the progress you 3 made this last year at the academy, and I would like to say that I'm proud to be your Jonin instructor. Unfortunately, I can't say that I'm to instructor just yet. As you know, there's one final test you 3 have to pass in order to truly be genin. My test, while different from Ebisu's test, will test you 3 in many of the same areas. But don't think that my test will be any easier. In order to pass my test, you 3 must spot a civilian couple, replace yourselves with the girlfriend, give the man a kiss without him suspecting the replacement, and make it back to the academy without being caught." Just like Koiki expected, all of her students were shocked by her test. Mimi was the first to overcome her shock and she quickly shouted out, "What kind of test is that, Koiki? Isn't this supposed to be a test of teamwork?" Ino and Hinata quickly nodded their heads to show their support. Koiki gave her students a small grin and replied, "You 3 already have decent teamwork, so it would be unfair to grade you 3 solely on that. Besides, you'll need your teamwork to complete this test." Irika probably mentioned that some teams have specific purposes. The purpose of Team 6 is infiltration, assassination, and sabotage. 3 ninja skills that kunoichi are uniquely suited for compared to shinobi. While it is unsavory, we often have get close some disgusting pigs in order to kill them. Luckily, genjutsu allows us to stay pure while we get close enough to our targets. This test will test you 3 on your teamwork, infiltration, and fortitude. Would you like to take the test now or tomorrow? Naturally, the younger members of Team 6 huddled together to make their decision. After a few minutes of busy discussion, the trio turned around and Hinata firmly said, "We want to get this over with, so we'll take the test now." None of them were thrilled with the idea of their first kiss being from a test, and it turned their stomachs. However, they all wanted to be true kunoichis and wouldn't complain. Haruna was sitting at the kitchen table sipping a cup of tea and reading the newspaper when Ino came home. Normally, Haruna wouldn't have paid much attention to this, but Ino's footsteps sounded rather annoyed. The vegetable princess put down her paper and asked, "What's wrong, Ino? You're usually not this annoyed." It was a little strange for Haruna to act like a concerned sister, but it was something that she had found herself doing more and more these days. Ino sat down on the opposite side of the table and moodily replied, "It's Koiki. At first I was excited that I had her as my Jonin instructor. After all, she's so good. But then, she gave us her idea of a test. Can you believe that she had my team substitute ourselves with someone's girlfriend and steal a kiss from them?" Now that Haruna could easily believe. She then quickly asked, "So Ino? Did your team pass its test or not?" Ino quickly replied, "Of course my team passed the test. There's no way that any of us would get sent back to the academy. We weren't about to give up just because our test was distasteful to us." A small smile crossed Haruna's face and she said, "That's probably what Koiki was trying to see if you would do." Haruna sighed when she saw the confused look on Ino's face and proceeded to explain. "I might not have spent as much time with Koiki as you have, Ino, but I can understand her thinking. She obviously wanted to make sure that you were prepared to do what you need to do in the future." The blonde kunoichi thought about Haruna's words and then said, "I think I understand, but something doesn't make sense. Koiki never put any emphasis on seduction when she trained me and my teammates this past year. She pretty much stuck with chakra exercises, teamwork exercises, and a few jutsus." Haruna shrugged her shoulders and replied, "Like I said, she wanted to make sure that you were prepared. My tutors didn't start me off with politics and advanced tactics. They started teaching me the basics. Koiki was likely doing the same." Ino nodded her head and gave Haruna a big smile. "Thanks for talking to me, Haruna," Ino said. "It's easier talking to you about these things than it is talking to mom or dad. I guess it's less awkward since you're closer to my age and aren't a ninja. Plus, I know you won't blab everything to your friends. Ino might like to gossip from time to time, but not nearly as much as her mother." She then quietly whispered, "It almost like having a big sister." That admission from Ino shocked Haruna. No one had ever thought of her like a sister before, and Haruna just didn't know how to respond. Her world had been constantly changing ever since she had arrived in Konoha. First she gets a true friend in Koiki. Then she was allowed to choose who she would stay with. Now, Ino admits that she thought of Haruna as a sister. It was all so confusing for the princess. After a few seconds of trying to sort it all out, Haruna said the only thing that could come to her. Thanks, Ino, I feel the same way. After Ino left the table, Haruna started to wonder why she had said that. Then it hit her. She really did consider Ino to be her sister. How it had happened, Haruna didn't have a clue. All she knew was that somehow Ino had managed to get into her heart. It took Naruto about a week to arrive at the godforsaken town he thought Jun Bakura might be using as a base. There were signs of street fights and killings all throughout the town. Pretty much every store, hotel, tavern, and brothel had at least one dead body outside or blood smears on the doors. Normally, a hunter ninja wouldn't have their headband showing so prominently. Naruto was wearing his headband on his forehead with a back bandana under for one reason: intimidation. Most criminals feared ninjas and thus be more willing to cooperate. Naruto knew he needed to get information from one of the local scum and headed towards the tavern that was the most banged up. Those places tended to be the best location to find some lowlife willing to sell out another criminal for a dead dog. Naruto felt a twitch coming on when he saw that the tavern's name was the Slug's Bosom. He made a note to mention the name of the tavern in his mission report. Hopefully, Sarutobi would allow it to slip out to Tsunade and the Slug Princess could show the owner her appreciation of the name. Once in the tavern, Naruto made his way to an empty barstool and waited for the barkeeper to come around. As soon as the old barkeeper arrived, Naruto slipped the man a few hundred ryo. He also quietly added, "A young man named Jun Bakura is being a bit of a thorn in the local governor's side. Any information on the pest would be much appreciated." The barkeeper had a scowl on his face and obviously didn't like the idea of selling out a fellow criminal to a ninja. However, the money and the subtle threat that Jun was drawing unnecessary attention the area won the barkeeper over in the end. In a gruff manner, the barkeeper spat out, "Bakura lives on Whore's Way, shows up for a day or two every 15 days or so and then heads out. Should be back tomorrow, now leave." Naruto left the tavern without saying a word. The kind of people who infested places like this weren't the sort to accept pleasantries. He quickly made his way down the street, which had earned its colorful name from all the brothels that lined it, to Jun's house. Now that Naruto knew where his target's base was, all that was left was to wait for Jun to show up. The barkeeper could be stretching the truth, so Naruto had decided to stake the place. Apparently Naruto's instincts were correct because Jun came walking up the street about an hour after Naruto had arrived. Jun walked up the steps and quickly entered his house. Naruto waited until after midnight before he made his move. Ever so silently, Naruto climbed up the steps, making sure to step exactly where Jun had walked. There was always the possibility of an alarm system set up on the steps. When Naruto reached the front door, he pulled out his pickpocket set and quickly picked the door lock. He then entered Jun's house and looked around for where Jun was staying. This perfect textbook assassination was derailed when a small black cat walked down the stairs. Before Naruto could do anything, the cat let out a loud hiss and ran up the stairs. Naruto knew that Jun was almost certainly alerted to his presence now. He quickly pulled out 2 kunai and abandoned stealth for speed. With luck, Naruto would still be able to get Jun without the boy being fully prepared for the assault. As soon as Naruto burst through the bedroom door, he cast a genjutsu over the entire room. Unfortunately, Jun was already up and armed. The criminal also caught on to the fact that there was a genjutsu up and quickly cancelled it. However, the cancellation process gave Naruto enough time to very close to Jun. If it had taken Jun a second longer, Naruto would have killed him right then and there. Sadly for Naruto, Jun was able to roll away from the kunai thrust and then jump out of the window. Naruto quickly gave chase and ran after Jun like a predator. Jun ran out of town and muttered to himself, as he briefly looked over his shoulder at Naruto. This guy doesn't know when to quit. Although Jun meant it to be demeaning, the ease with which Naruto stayed on his tail scared the criminal. Naruto was obviously a hunter ninja and his usage of genjutsu was really scary. Jun had nearly been trapped by Naruto's genjutsu several times and had escaped each time by the skin on his nose. If he didn't do something soon, Naruto would kill him. Without warning, Jun jumped in the air and spun around to face Naruto. While in midair, Jun popped a large purple pill into his mouth. Jun landing in front of Naruto and quickly removed his eye patch, revealing a Sharingan eye. Naruto couldn't believe what he was seeing. The Sharingan wasn't supposed to exist anymore except for the single eye that Kakashi had. A smirk appeared on Jun's face when he saw Naruto pause. He couldn't see Naruto's face because of the hunter's mask, but it was easy to figure out that Naruto was shocked. In a low voice, Jun said, "I see you recognize this eye. Since you're from Konoha, you must know what its powers are. After all, you Leaf ninjas were so afraid of its powers that slaughtered the Uchiha clan over it. The man who gave me this eye told me all about its secrets. There's no way you can beat me now." The pace of battle quickly changed as Naruto went on the defensive. Naruto seriously doubted his ability to mix his genjutsu with his taijutsu effectively in this fight. It was simply smarter with the Sharingan's ability to see through genjutsu to save the energy for later. After dogging a fireball, Naruto decided to try and figure out an attack plan. Simply waiting for June to drop down exhausted wasn't a reasonable answer. Naruto didn't want to use one of the few long-distance combat jutsus he knew out of fear that June would dodge and send it right back at him. How was one to fight someone if they could mimic all of your moves? The answer suddenly came to Naruto like a bolt of lightning. If some could, and did, mimic someone else, then the person being mimicked could trick the mimicker. Naruto immediately started a jutsu, and to his joy, June immediately started copying the jutsu. A small grin crossed Naruto's face as he finished the last hand sign, and his body was racked with pain. Even though the pain, Naruto couldn't help smiling at June's shocked expression and agonized expression. Naruto had tricked June into performing a suicide jutsu. The fool should have known better than to just copy a jutsu without knowing exactly what it was. Due to his bloodline, Naruto lived through the jutsu. Naruto immediately headed over to June's corpse and quickly sealed it inside a scroll. How the man had gotten a supposedly extinct Sharingan needed to be figured out, and the more information the corpse cutters had the better. Asusa and Sarutobi were holding private conference in Asusa's office when Naruto suddenly entered the office. Naruto pulled out his sealing scroll and said, "Sorry for interrupting you two, but there's something you both need to see." Without waiting for a reply, Naruto unsealed June's body and pulled the head up so that the Sharingan was plainly visible. The two leaders immediately forgot about their previous conversation and stared at the Sharingan eye. Sarutobi was the first to regain his wits. "Who else knows about this?" Naruto immediately said, "Just the three of us besides whoever gave the eye to June. I knew you both needed to know this, so I came here straight away." Asusa then stated, "Understandable, Naruto. Reseal the corpse into the scroll and leave it here. Do not mention the Sharingan eye at all in your main report. You burnt the body and returned the head, understood? Here, go to the black room and fill out a 666 form." Asusa had tossed Naruto the key to the secure office used for writing classified reports. Naturally, Naruto caught the key and he nodded his head. Sarutobi dismissed Naruto once he had resealed June's corpse. As soon as Naruto was gone, Asusa turned to Sarutobi and said, "I'm glad that Naruto informed us of this unexpected development so swiftly. How could one of those eyes still be in existence? We burned all of the Uchiha corpses just to avoid this potential problem." Sarutobi put his pipe in his mouth and said, "I don't know, Asusa. However, this is a disturbing situation. The other villagers rightly respected the Sharingan, and would have done almost anything to get their hands on it. If they catch word that someone has been implanting Sharingan eyes, I don't want to think of the manhunt that will be arranged to locate whoever did this." Asusa's eyes narrowed and he said, "Could this be the work of Orochimaru? He always was obsessed with the Sharingan, and was completely amoral in his medical research. Could he have found a way to grow a Sharingan eye?" The old Hokage thought about it for a few minutes and then wearily said, "I honestly don't know. Is such a thing even possible? Also, if Orochimaru could create a Sharingan eye, why would he give it to a low-level ninja like this June Bakura? I'll take this down to research for examination. We can't do anything until we have actual facts instead of mere speculation." Once Sarutobi had left the office, Asusa tried to figure out what he should do. This whole situation was extremely troublesome. What if there were more of these Rouge Sharingan eyes out there? None of his hunters were trained to fight against the Sharingan since the Uchiha clan was extinct. How could he get all of his hunters prepared to fight another Sharingan user without letting this news out? Naruto had decided to just walk around the village after he had filled out all the paperwork. Everywhere Naruto went, he was greeted by the villagers. The villagers' respect wasn't as grating on Naruto's nerves as it had been when he was younger. By now, Naruto had realized that they wouldn't stop being so respectful to him. However, he was at least starting to earn that respect. Around sunset, Naruto decided to go get some dinner and stopped at Ichiraku Ramen. Naruto loved Ichiraku's the most out of all the restaurants in Konoha. It was the only place that served his favorite food and treated him like a regular customer. The ramen stand was almost empty when Naruto arrived, but that didn't matter. Mr. Tucci and Ayam were there, and they were more than happy to whip up a few bowls for their number one customer. Dinner lasted about an hour, and then Naruto went home. Something felt wrong as Naruto approached his house. His senses were telling him that someone was inside the house. Naruto checked the front door for any signs of forced entry, but there were none. However, that didn't mean that someone couldn't have forced their way in from another entry point. Naruto carefully opened the door and slipped inside. Once Naruto was inside, his nose picked up Koiki's scent. Almost immediately Naruto relaxed and started removing his weapons. There was no way for anyone to mimic another person's scent, especially in a manner that could fool his or an Inuzuka's nose. Naruto then walked over to the refrigerator to pull out a cold soda and discovered that it was completely restocked. This sight brought a smile to Naruto, as Koiki had obviously been thoughtful enough to go grocery shopping for him. After Naruto finished his soda, he chucked the can into the trash bin and decided to find Koiki. She must have a reason why she hadn't greeted him yet, and he wanted to know what it was. Naruto calmly tracked Koiki down, growing more and more suspicious as her trail led him closer to his bedroom. When Naruto opened his bedroom door, he immediately noticed Koiki lying in the middle of his bed. The thing that really got Naruto's attention was the provocative nightie Koiki was wearing, along with a ribbon wrapped all around and tied in a bow between her breasts. Naruto was frozen at the sight of Koiki. He may have seen her in a lot less many times, that sight was so alluring. Koiki opened her eye and smiled at the sight of Naruto standing dumbstruck in the doorway. She then softly said, "Good evening, Naruto. I was wondering when you would get home. How about you unwrap your welcome home gift that I've prepared for you?" In a dumbfounded manner, Naruto replied, "Welcome home gift?" His brain hadn't been able to finish rebooting from the sight of Koiki just yet, and so Naruto was a bit slow on the uptake. Koiki found Naruto's stupor amusing and let out a small chuckle. "Don't you remember, dear," Koiki said with her mirth evident in her eyes, "what I said when you asked me to stay here with you? On the day I move in, you would have me as your woman instead of just as your girlfriend. My things have already been stowed in this house and I ended the lease on my apartment. From this night forward, I give my body to you, Naruto, to do whatever you want with it." Naruto quickly got over his stupor and started to disrobe. He then crawled over to Koiki and started to remove the ribbon. All of Naruto's worries disappeared as his world shrunk down to his bedroom and his beautiful, loving princess. Naruto found himself waking up in a frigid, lonely plateau, instead of waking up his warm bedroom next to his lover Koiki. It just didn't make any sense. How could he be transported out of his bedroom to this area? Logically, there was no possible way for this to be accomplished. That meant that he was under a genjutsu, and so Naruto immediately attempted to cancel the illusion. The young genjutsu prodigy growled when he saw that nothing in his surroundings had changed. There was absolutely no way that this could be a genjutsu, since even the best illusion would have wavered a bit if he was canceling it. With that in mind, Naruto looked around to try and get his bearings. That was easier said than done since the sky was completely covered in black clouds. The cloud cover was so thick that the only light came from the numerous lightning strikes among the clouds and glowing red lines off near the horizons. Naruto thought that those lines might be rivers of lava, but he wasn't sure. Eventually, Naruto got fed up with just wandering around the rocky plateau after a few minutes. He cupped his hands together and shouted out, "Whoever brought me here, so yourself. I want answers. Why have you brought me here?" Suddenly the temperature plunged even lower and the winds gusted behind Naruto. The young man turned around and saw a spectral form appear. Somehow, Naruto knew exactly who he was looking at. He had never met this person as far as he knew, but he instinctively recognized this entity. Naruto bowed his head and said, "Hello, Shinigami. Why have you called me here? I hope it's for a good reason, because you're, no disrespect intended, the last person I'd ever thought I'd see in my lifetime." Naruto's patron god looked at the boy and let out a harsh-sounding, but still good-natured, laugh. The deity then replied, "You're an interesting mortal, Naruto Namikaze. Most mortals would be quivering in terror by now, asking me to spare their lives or pleading that they don't deserve to spend eternity in a forbidding place like this.